and welcome to Spotlight, the official podcast of Grapple. I'm Benno.
And I'm JP.
Oh, we're here again, JP, for another show. We did miss last week. I'm very sorry about that. I was a bit under the weather. Came home with the Copperbox flu, but fighting fit now. We did manage to get the weekend show at the end of the week. So if people missed us, they can check that out. But I say that I don't think it wasn't a bad week to not have a spotlight. There wasn't a lot going on. Whereas now we've kind of got like one of those shows where there's a million things in the wrestling world to kind of cover, and we covered people over as well. JP, they got the time episode. Patrons got it earlier in the week as like a nice little preview around the time Spotlight would usually come out. But everyone should have it now. It's on everyone's feeds on Spotify, including the uncensored video version is on Spotify. JP, it got past the censors so far. They haven't shut down on Spotify yet
because of crossed on that one.
If Girls Aloud and Sugar Babes are the ones to bring us down, I'm going to be devastated. But it's on the YouTube too, if people find that easier as well. But I've got to say, like, just to launch right into it, like Time is like literally, I think it's the best show that's on this network, and I'm not on it. If we don't really have a network, do we? Best thing with under the Grapple logo, I would say, is Time. And yeah, you lads knocked it out the park again. Even sent the link over to Joe to see if he'd give it a listen. I think he's be right up his street. But yeah, September 2007, wasn't it? We were in when we were down for the Copperbox. We were staying in our favorite Romford Travel Lodge, and couldn't sleep one night, and threw it on. And before we knew it, we were 2.5 hours in. Enjoying the talk of 15 to 1 being the G1 of game shows. Which ones of the sugar babes and Spice Girls? Who was Brett? Who was Sean? Who was Austin? And there were some good theories thrown out on that one.
With Spice Girls as Universal, they're Hogan. They're like the Hogan of girl bands.
I'm with you on that, yeah. But always brilliant. Honestly, really good. Liam does a cracking job on that. Liam's
an incredible job.
The scenes as far as putting that one together as well. He's the MVP, but no, he was all great. It was another great one, JP. But yeah, brought back some memories from me. 2007, a few songs I hadn't really thought about in a while. Stuff in the box office was interesting. TV's always interesting, and sports always interesting because it's always there's always something going on with you all that, isn't there? At any given moment in time.
We were turning it. I think I went on a rant, and I went on a rant about Danielson. That's probably why the sports bit kind of ran over on that. I was legit angry that year, I think, about a lot of Arsenal stuff. That's the year that Eduardo got his leg broken, and it was somehow his fault. Again, still very incredibly bitter about that, and the Fabregas one, and the Aaron Ramsey one, and all of that ever happened in there.
Will saying in the chat, Nadine is the Brett of Girls Aloud. Timberland in 07. Oh yeah, that came up a lot, didn't it? Yeah. Timberland was having a renaissance.
Timberland is Steve Austin in 98. He just seems to be he's all over like 3 of the top 10.
Yeah.
I can't remember any of them. Like, I've got no recollection. I just asked Vicky, instead of blank expression on my face, she's just like, you don't know that song? And I'm like, no. The Way I Are, like, it just doesn't even make grammatical sense to me, but I'll let that slide. But it's always brilliant, and you like say, massive shout out to Liam as well for like all of the kind of prep for getting it into place. And I just hope people really enjoy it. So yeah, go to YouTube. Obviously, it's an edited version. We're playing by their rules on there in a minute, and they've said that this version's fine. So I'm taking them at their word. If there's a problem with it, I'm blaming YouTube at this stage. I've had plenty of time to complain about it. But if you do want the unedited version, currently it's up on Spotify. And we've obviously got it on the Patreon page as well there. But that's not all we've released this weekend, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, just going to say quickly on that, like, I enjoyed like the talk about like the Pride stuff and all the UFC stuff. Like those Who Wants to Be a Millionaire episode you were talking about, I had a massive memory of them. But it was the Gordon Ramsay in the States trying to break America, which is probably my favorite bit. Well, there's always a bit in those episodes of time when I'm shouting at like I was going to say the radio, my phone, wanting to get involved in the chat. Like, that does my head in that. Like, it's like when we went to Vegas, like every second restaurant's a Gordon Ramsay restaurant. He's like a brand now. He's not even a person. It's like there's like 3 of them in Liverpool as well. It's like he's not making the food, Like, why is it such a big deal? It's got just Gordon Ramsay's burgers, pizzas, chips. Like, his world domination pretty much started in this episode. And it's like, he's the world's biggest heel for me. Like, if you're doing wrestling equivalents with them, he's the Triple H of chefs for me as our Gordon.
And he's appearing on what would be the equivalent of, like, I don't know, Peter Rosenberg with that High Performance podcast with Jake Humphries, which I've seen a clip from it. And I went, I've heard about this before, and I'm never listening to this because it's like the worst hard luck story you'll ever hear. If you haven't seen that,
Rosenberg's a cunt in everywhere. In wrestling, punditry, hip hop stuff. Same bloke. Time is up there for anyone who wants to check it out and wants to go down memory lane as well. But before we get into the main stuff, obviously, as well, we're continuing on Halloween month. We just recorded our Spooky Moment show with King of the Mountain Robert Brocky, going through some of the wacky and often shit, but sometimes good moments in wrestling history involving supernatural stuff. We did a great chat in the Austin and Undertaker angle again with Matty and Robert, going all the way back to all kinds, really. WCW in the late 90s with Chucky. Dungeon of Doom got a bit of coverage in there as well. JP, it was we were all over the show as far as the different shite / sometimes good spooky angles in the history of wrestling. Think of it as WrestleCrap the podcast, but we did actually pull some gems out as well. So definitely check that out.
That was brilliant. I loved doing that. That was like, it brought back so many kind of, like, particularly going from like say Black Scorpion to like the Undertaker, who was all
even
over.
I think as a kid, I knew that was shit, because there was some of those spooky angles where it's like, there were ones that absolutely worked on me. We talked about like the Papa Shango angle people can hear us chat about, and like that was one of the ones where I was like, a scary angle in wrestling is working when, like, literally in my school, I heard about that. The jobber whose boots were on fire, like, a week before I actually saw it with my own eyes. I heard about the Ultimate Warrior puking before I ever saw it. Those are the ones that kind of stick with you. However, Black Scorpion was one where it was just like, even as a kid watching that WCW taping, like probably like 93, 94, by the time I got to it, it was like, this is shit. And that's clearly Ric Flair. So got to have a good laugh at that stuff. All your favourite moments in WCW history, there, JP?
I love that stuff. If it's early 90s WCW, I mean, and as we go into it on there, like, I was all over the Apta Mags, WCW TV. So it was prime kind of era for this type of stuff as well. And then we go into the conversation of other stuff that wasn't like necessarily there. That wasn't, it's not all like the kind of stuff that went wrong around Halloween for that. Like, I mean, just to say the unholy marriage between the Undertaker and a likeable Steph McMahon, which it's incredible. Her performance is one of the best. It's as good as she's ever gotten, and it's just sad that she's done it like at the age of like kind of 18. It's like Edward Furlong in Terminator 2. This is as good as he's ever going to get. He's never going to do any better than this. And American History X is good, but she can't get anywhere kind of close to that. But it was brilliant, and it was just like the kind of ranging conversation, and even the stuff that we didn't necessarily get around to watching, and we spoke about on there as well, like the kind of offshoots of Vampiro and stuff like that. And a massive shout out to Robert, who's brilliant, who's really, really great.
He's like, great on it,
And we said this a bit of time, like he was the first King of the Mountain that we've had, and he's been with us ever since, and he's incredible, and I can't ever thank him enough for the support and everything else. But it's a brilliant show. We have to say, it's something about the picks. There's something that he manages to bring out, because with Chris Masters, Muhammad Hassan, and this, and all of them are interesting in different ways. Definitely. So love this show.
Yeah, check it out if you can. And obviously, a big thanks to Robert. Always a pleasure chatting with him. We'll have to catch him next time he's over on our shows for a pint in one of his favourite Weatherspoons, as we learnt on that podcast as well. But if you want to do the same, set the agenda, pick the show we're going to do. King of the Mountain is always available to you. We'll have some slots opening up into early next year, I think. And in the meantime, if you're not a King of the Mountain but you are a patron, we have opened the latest patrons poll as our last podcast to close. Begrudgingly. Being forced to call Spooky Month is our Halloween Havoc.
When are we ending it? This poll?
Take 48 hours or so. We'll
I was going to say Wednesday at 9.
Some classics on there. What are before we'll get into the base stuff now? What are the Halloween Havocs we've got on the agenda for our last one?
Well, JP? He says as he's literally posting this as we speak. On here we have it's a good wide range. We've got the very first one, Halloween Havoc 89. That's headlined by Flair and Sting versus Muta and Funk. Then we've got Halloween Havoc 92, Sting versus Jake Roberts, Coal Miner's Glove. These are just the main events. Obviously, we're reviewing the whole show. 93, Big Van Vader versus Cactus Jack. 95, Hulk Hogan versus the Giant. 98, Goldberg versus Diamond Dallas Page. And 2000, Goldberg versus Chronic. So if you want to vote on those and, join up to the Patreon, the poll will be ending Wednesday at time of recording at 9 p.m. I've set that there at the moment. So there'll be people hopefully voting for it during this show as well. Just going to have a quick look, see if anyone's voted on it at the moment. I don't know. There already has been.
A lot of love from the patrons for 95, that one, and 98, another big one, big stacked card on there. I've got a lot of love for 92. I want Sting and Jake to win. I'm trying to fix the poll, vote for what you like.
I don't want to alarm you, mate. Do you want to know what's winning after it being on for like 1 minute? Have a guess.
Russo.
2000. Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Goldberg versus Chronic. Again, this is, I suppose the beauty of being a patron is then you put us through this and we're like, what?
Set the agenda.
Exactly. And it's been a month of this as well, of patrons who've chosen what effectively we've been reviewing on this, because we did the Saw Film Club as well, and that was chosen by the patrons. It's a cracking show, I have to say, for that as well as the Observe This that we did, which was like the Dealer's Choice Redux, where we spoke about Sean's bullshit injury. We'll just call it as it is for that point in time. So, yeah, loads of stuff going on there. So if you haven't gone there already, I'm plugging it hard here, patreon.com.
I know. Am I on with you, Don West? Like, what's going on here?
You are. Well, the spirit of TNA is very much there. And as to quote Mike Tenay from his Hall of Fame, tremendous Hall of Fame speech, like he was the best salesman ever. Fuck me, if only I could be half the selling stuff.
Fucking... That story where Scott D'Amore was saying about like literally sold the jacket off me back. Yeah. He was like, and I told him, no, I bought that myself. It's like, and he bought it himself. And he's like, he gets him to sign it and stuff like that to put a few more dollars on. We could all learn to get a few tips there from Don West. But you're right, perfect segue into what we're talking this week is. Yeah, it's a weird week. Like I said, we've got some catch up to do from last week's stuff. Like I say, we'll get into the Copperbox later on, even maybe some MLW and CMLL talk. Obviously, catch up on Royal Quest. Got a bit of WWE talk, lots of AEW talk from over the weekend. But never thought I'd say this, JP. But there's only one place to start, and it is the home of Don West. And no, it is not Impact Wrestling, JP, as the logos behind you for video viewers on YouTube and now on the Spotify can see. We're gonna chat TNA, mate. Did you ever think we'd do a podcast covering? Did we exist during the TNA years? When did TNA stop? Like, I feel like it stopped before we even started podcasting. Maybe it was a couple of years in. I think it was like the dying days of TNA. Maybe we covered a little bit, but TNA wrestling, mate, crossed the line. It's back. You should be flying the flag. I thought you'd have a big TNA t-shirt on, your Don West soul hat. Like, the dream is back, is it not, JP? It's funny though. I crack a joke. Like, my immediate reaction to that news story was like, that's fucking hilarious. They're going back to TNA. Are they joking? And we can get into that and why all the reasons why there's probably bad reason to do it. But it has surprised me the amount of people who've come off the woodwork who are like massively. There has been a push, I would say, over like the last 18 months, couple of years or so, of like TNA nostalgia. So Garrett Kidney say that on Twitter, who is kind of the leader of that pack. You're past that gang as well, mate.
Oh yeah. I mean, for a lot of us, the reason for supporting it, without going into sort of like
2017,
2017 for this March.
Never actually officially covered TNA.
March 2017 in there as well, and then between June 2017 to September 2017, it was Global Force Wrestling as well. Soon, hopefully, to be another show that we cover on the Patreon. But it was there as we wanted an alternative to WWE at that point in time after them buying up ECW and WWE. So it's, the name itself was very, very kind of Russo. I'm really split on this in so many ways. Like, I kind of can't almost decide how I feel about it. Instinctively, if you ask me, I think it's the thing that they're known best for, and it fits in with all of their kind of branding of other stuff. All the really major stuff that happened in their history with all of the various kind of important people who passed through, like your AJs and the rest of it. It's all TNA history rather than Impact. Impact has been surviving since they've been Impact Wrestling. They've managed to get through effectively because of Anthem Entertainment, and they've kind of steadily grown like at a very slow rate, as in it doesn't appear to be like hemorrhaging. They're kind of quite well managed, quite well booked. I think there's possibly a good argument for Scott D'Amore to being the kind of Booker of the Year. That's more damning with faint praise in some ways, because I don't think it's been a banner year for creative elsewhere on this. But in terms of the rebrand itself, because I heard about it on like kind of social media, so I was just like weirded out by it. I was like, okay, they're going back to it. The connotations, which always was the problem with the original of TNA, because it was Vince Russo, the idea of, you're thinking tits and ass, not total non-stop action. But that feels like it's on a different time. I don't think that connotation works necessarily today in 2023. If you're going to say TNA wrestling, I think it's kind of like an easier sell. If in this country, for example, in the UK, it'd be easy to come over and go, oh, is that thing that was on Challenge TV? And you'd know what it was. You wouldn't think of it as Impact Wrestling. You'd always think of Impact as the TNA show, and then they had their pay-per-views. Now, I get why they made the change. In some ways, is this going to be part of like a bigger push? That's the thing I can't quite work out. Is this going to involve Anthem putting in more money, more time, more effort, all of these kind of things behind it to do something with it? But it is like, is this a desperation move to just go, right, we're just going to go back to it and we're going to see what sticks? Yeah. And they're going to do 6-sided rings next as a result of this. Is there, because I think what they're trying to do ultimately is trying to shop this as a TV program, or what they probably really would like somebody to buy it as much as anything else, but to shop it as a TV program in an era where wrestling TV is cheap alternative to live sports. If the NWA going onto the CW network is true, you might see a few companies do that. And TNA has weirdly more name recognition than Impact Wrestling. Yeah. And plus, it's less confusing if you're showing all that classic footage, all the stuff from the early 2000s. Well, it's all got TNA all over it up until you kind of get to
a lot of the YouTube's got Global Force Wrestling on it, but that's another problem. No, I'm with you in being split on it, because like I say, my initial reaction was to laugh at it because it is funny. And it's a very TNA move, to be like, oh, we'll have a 6-sided ring. We won't have a 6-sided ring. Guess what? The 6-sided ring is back. Guess what? It was never good. There's been loads like these moments, and it's like, we after finally, and it was hard at first to stop calling it TNA. Every now and then I'll slip, but mostly the Impact Wrestling branding is kind of stuck. So to spend all this time establishing that to then go back is a very LOL TNA move, and it's funny, and my gut reaction is to go, oh, you fucking dickheads, you're going back to a name that was back in the day associated with tits and ass, and it was a pun, and it was never a good name, but Spotlight was never a good name, and that stuck with us for fucking 7 years. So we've got to clear into it. That it's understand. It happens. Does it once something becomes? You just say it a lot. Undertaker. We always talk about that being the way one of a bad wrestling name. Triple H. What's a Triple H? You don't even think about it. You just say it. What's a Big Show? Eventually, it just becomes the name, doesn't it? And I think when they've originally became Impact Wrestling again, I think I'd have to check the tape if we did even talk about it at the time. I would imagine my take would be, yeah, it makes sense. And I think we've overall over the last few years saw them as you know what, lads, they know their place in the world. They're not trying to be the TNA of old. Impact Wrestling's a different thing, and they know that they're of a certain, they're in that MLW, adjacent, used to be ROH kind of slot, in the grand scheme of wrestling. Yeah. And I think we encourage that and say that's realistic and what you should be. But when you look at it now, it's is that actually a bit of an own goal in a little way? That you're almost you're pocketing yourself as a smaller company, as, you're, for better or worse, that TNA name was a thing that people knew. It was, especially over here, Europe in general, but the UK, there were lots of big TNA fans. It was on a decent slot on TV. It was a challenger to WWE at a time. It was a big time wrestling organization. It was doing, $1 million to $1.5 million of points on TV. You know what I mean? It had brand equity. It genuinely did. And maybe it is a little bit of an own goal to kind of just own that name and not use it, and instead be this, I think of TNA for all its shit, and there is a lot of it, There's a lot of good stuff too that should be said too, and the TNA list will tell us that. But there's a lot of bad. But like for all of that stuff, I think in my head the vision of TNA is the company that failed but tried to kind of take on WWE and be the original challenger brand that Tony Khan tries to think of himself as. You say the words Impact Wrestling, I think tiny company that's of MLW size that has small shows with nobody there, and it is what it is. And maybe a name doesn't hugely change that, but it probably is at this point, more associated with a bigger time wrestling company, as well as being associated with all the negatives. And like I say, with that nostalgia push, I'm more sympathetic to it than I think I was like my initial reaction to it, JP. I think I've maybe turned around a little bit on it, like, fuck it, what else are you going to do? Like, I was talking about it, first subject on the spotlight. Like, when's that happen? It's front page of all the wrestling news websites because of some other stuff we're going to talk about today as well. But they're actually in front of the news cycle. So even if it's just a temporary kind of like publicity push, and if they are trying to sink more money into it and up production and stuff like that, they've got a little bit of attention. There's maybe a ceiling to that TNA nostalgia, but they've got a bit of attention, so it's kind of worked in that way in some ways too.
That's it, isn't it? And I really agree with you there. Like, that they have managed for once to capture the attention. And I think the reason why I'm willing to give this a shot is partly because of the people that they've currently got involved, namely of which Scott D'Amore, who really is. I know I mean, like in some ways he is like Mr. TNA. This is the guy who the company has been at its most steady when he's been in charge. That's when it's been at its best. From a booking direction, it's generally like kind of at its worst, it's a competently booked product with limitations because of what they have budget-wise for wrestlers and things like that. And you go, okay, they make the best of what they have here. And if he is kind of all right with it, in many ways, he'd be the person you'd have to trust his judgment. You'd have to say, okay, if he thinks this is actually like a good decision, and he's the one who's out there like fronting the company and says, do you know what? It's TNA that people talk about as well. And if we are going to try and vlog this, and we are going to try and like maybe sell this onto a TV network to have this, they've still got Impact there as part of the branding, because that will always be the name of the TV show as well. So it's not like it's a weird twist from one to the other. I also think there's this odd thing about wrestling and wrestling fans. We are conditioned to think of like acronyms for companies, particularly three-letter ones. So WWE, AEW, like even the idea of TNA kind of falling into that kind of camp, whether it's, the chants or anything else. It's the stuff that kind of sticks with us as wrestling fans, like WCW and NWA, and the list goes on and on. We kind of always think that this is going to be the case, but I can't help but feel the push for this, the fact they're going to be at a 2,000-seat stadium, some of the other stories that are coming out today, which...
Well,
it's,
God, you said it.
Yeah. I mean, to say it's ambitious, is it going to happen? No. It used to remind me of what would be Spurs transfer gossip of like, we're interested in this player. It's like, yeah, you might be interested. Waterford United might be interested in signing Lionel Messi from Inter Miami. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. They're two entirely different things. But I do suspect that they think, okay, there is a chance where there is this possibility of getting decent paid TV deals for the product, for something that's been around for a while. What it relies on them doing is not changing anything that they're doing, but just improving the people that they kind of have there to be able to do it. In many ways, that's like the way they kind of should fit within this kind of world and universe. I kind of like them for making the attempt to try and do something here. Like, I don't know, I might get sick of it very quickly. Does it mean I'm going to watch TNA all the time when it rebrands in 2024? I think, like we said earlier on, it's a really tricky one, because I kind of hate the name in many ways, but I also simultaneously am incredibly nostalgic for it. And this creates the whole problem that we kind of have. It's synonymous with good and bad, but it is known. That's the thing. And Impact Wrestling, you're thinking of them in these tapings at the beginning with like Bobby Lashley doing some of his best work. This is the reason for his WWE run, in front of about 50 people in just like what appeared to be a darkened room, and there'd be a ring there, and they would just somehow managing to scratch and survive.
Yeah, that's where I am. There's clear and obvious negatives like that are tied to that brand. I just don't think you can avoid that. but time heals wounds, and I think, you know, it's been a while now. Like I say, that nostalgia element has kind of pulled in to the point where, yeah, I think the fact that it is just a more, at the end of the day, people know what TNA is, you know, more so than they know what Impact Wrestling is, you know, and I think that's it, black and white, like, and that makes it probably worth doing. And again, it grabs these headlines. The idea of, like, you know, as you alluded to there, and I've got on the screen for video viewers, there's been a couple of stories dropping today. You know, basically, apparently at that the TV taping. Now, still won't get. It's going to take getting used to again. We got so used to Impact saying Impact. Now we need to get back used to saying TNA. At the TNA TV taping, Will Ospreay dropped some hints about joining TNA. You know, talking about how he was a fan of Christopher Daniels, Samoa Joe, and AJ Styles, through wrestlers who've got nothing to do with the new version of TNA. But you can see it, you know, in the, you know, about so Bound for Glory. You know, he threw a little cheeky Styles clash in, didn't he? Ospreay in his match there. You know, he said he didn't want to come to Impact Wrestling. He wanted to come to TNA. So, you know, he wants to step foot in the TNA ring. He's also been doing interviews today where he's apparently talked about you know, being open to going to WWE too. But it's Will Ospreay, so it wouldn't shock you. Like, it's actually not impossible for him to potentially do something daft and sign for like a newly rebranded TNA. But, you know, the other big one is Punk being backstage at that taping. Obviously, they take the Bound for Glory show in Chicago, which was home to Ace Steel working backstage there, which I think is, like, I mean, feels like a real shrewd move. That, like, oh yeah, by the way, Ace, haven't been in touch in a while, but we're about to relaunch this TNA thing. Fancy coming back and working production? Oh, by the way, we have this policy where it's all dogs allowed. If you want to tell anyone, also there's free Pepsi on tap, just in case you want to bring any friends along. And Ace Steel did bring a friend along to work, as Punk was spotted backstage at the Chicago taping, according to House of Wrestling, and was apparently helping out, giving advice to any wrestlers that want it. Didn't start any fights, JP. Nobody got bitten. No muffins were eaten. It was all a very nice scene, according to the Punk camp, until we find out that, like, yeah, Kazarian will come out, or some Impact wrestler will come out, and it'll turn out that he called someone a prick, or he wouldn't let somebody backstage, or something like that. But that's interesting, you know, that he's there backstage in the mix. I don't think I genuinely believe that we're going to get a CM Punk in Impact. I think it would, you know, it would be a big step down for Punk to say the least. If he's not doing it, obviously, out of AEW, WWE, you know, whether you believe the reports or not, aren't going to be using him. I think he knows his brand. I think he knows, like, even if it's a revamped TNA with a load of money behind it, and they get their fucking Challenge TV deal back, and they start running arenas in Europe again, even then, I think Punk knows, you know, he had experience himself. TNA is always going to TNA, you know, him and Julia De Niro and Raven and all that stuff. Back
he got fired.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Got fired. Yeah. Because
started a fight with Teddy Hart.
Yeah. All that too.
All of that stuff, the bit where they used to eat and the rest of it. It is. Would you do it if they could? Of course you would. I can't help but feel that this is just a thing to kind of leverage of, these are the potential options I've got, and the rest of it. Like I say, I always keep a close eye on New Japan, and a very short run there is the kind of thing to go, well, you know, there is the possibility to bring him in and have that kind of like short run with him. It doesn't have to be like an extended mammoth contract for it. Would it put some eyeballs on them? I mean, Access TV and stuff like that would be it just seems to be such a downgrade in terms of like what he's dealing with. He
did do that WWE Fox and Friends show thing, like whatever the fuck that was, you know, the talk show, right? No, so he's not stranger to killing his own brand. He also went into UFC and got knocked out in 10 seconds or whatever it was. So he's not, you know,
just commentary, isn't he?
His brand. He's not that protective, you know. It's not impossible.
Yeah, he does commentary for like real lower level, like MMA promotions as well. Stuff that there's not a lot of money in it, but like that's what he's doing. So do I think it's going to happen? No, I just can't see this happen. This feels like, to go into TNA analogy mode, when Jarrett went over to New Japan and hit Hulk Hogan with a guitar. When he went over there, trying to get him in, and what do we get? We got Jimmy Hart instead. So it feels like that's what we're getting with Ace Steel. He'll be back as a producer. And he'll say to them, oh, you know, it's actually quite good here and all the rest of it. Is Colt Cabana coming in? Absolutely fucking not. Is there as many people? Can he have the run of the place? Pretty much. There wouldn't be anybody like who would view themselves as being kind of close to his level. I can't see that happening. I can't see Alex Shelley having like an enormous kickoff. I think they would all just go, well, we should get a boost in the attendances. You would have thought they'll be running Chicago fucking again. I'll tell you that much.
They'll be like Tony every other weekend from Chicago.
Every other weekend, for there.
It's just it's interesting though that they're in the news. As a Punk fan, do I want to see that? No, obviously. I think option A is AEW still. I still like hold the candle. Maybe one day he'll go back because it just felt like the perfect place for Punk, and we're never getting it again. Option 2 would be New Japan. Option 3 would be WWE, and then a distant option 4 or 5. I think would be I probably have WWE ahead of New Japan. To be fair, I think he could make that work. Impact would be Impact would be literally no one else will take. And he seems to desperately want to wrestle. So there's that possibility there, but do I see it? No. Do I think it's a good idea? Also, no. But fun to dream, JP. Fun to dream.
I think that's almost the big takeaway, is he does still want to be around wrestling. That much isn't in doubt.
Yeah.
Who is going to be out there is going to pay him the kind of money he wants, give him the amount of freedom and latitude that he wants as well, i.e. bringing in basically his own people, probably his own bookers, and while de facto booking the product. Like, that's the kind of thing. Is there any company who's going to be willing to do that? He's going to be willing to afford him as well. Like, that's why if I'm going to hedge my bets, and I know there's not even any rumors about this. This is just me thinking, okay, logically, where could he go to for a short-term run, which doesn't require him to do too many dates, where he'll have a good handle on his creative, but also have a good amount of latitude. And he thinks, well, New Japan, like, seems to be able to do that, but that's more to then show, like, that's all leverage for WWE. That's what ultimately all of this is about, because he recognizes that's the big game in town if he wants to be earning big money in wrestling. No Vince McMahon about hoping that the kind of time heals all wounds, but a load of people thinking, well, you're a prick. So like that's the stumbling block there. Impact don't have like that kind of freedom to be able to say, oh, I don't know if you'll get on with the people in the back in Impact. Fuck that. Johnny Swinger doesn't like him. Johnny Swinger is gone. It's
Collision. Like, Collision was bad enough. Imagine him on TNA. They'd just be like, yeah, whatever you want to do. Like, start a backstage fight club and get rid of every wrestler who's not from Chicago. Everyone who's not straight edge or not from Chicago, get the fuck out. Anyone who gives him a funny look in catering, you're out too. Like, actually, I think that might be bad. I think he needs like a WWE where there's some checks and balances, I think, or like a New Japan where there's at least a little bit of a stringent thing. But Ewan says NWA in the chat. That's not happening. I don't see him crossing over to that side anytime soon.
Well,
you know.
And he mentions there about New Japan Strong. It's really the New Japan USA shows. But the problem with that is how many of them are cross-pollinated with AEW and various other people from that. You start to get into...
Kenny and Punk?
Yeah, it would be mad. It would be like kind of really fun to kind of see that happen. But, I mean, that would be... I wouldn't never rule that out as an option as well. And I suppose we haven't spoken really about the Ospreay stuff as well. I mean, that's just him hedging his bets. That's what I just assume for this. I mean,
he could end up anywhere. I don't think if he was smart, and he's not, but if he was, I think like he should sign for WWE probably at some point soon. Just from his point of view, I don't want to see it. Like I think Suit said on Twitter, it's like what I said about Ben Carter ages ago, and I had the Americans jumping down me mentions. Like at that point, I suppose maybe not now with like if Triple H is in charge of creative, which we can get into. He's kind of dead to me at that point. It's kind of like the Ospreay now, who goes out there and goes out there for the 11-star matches, to quote one of our co-hosts, will be dead at that point, and it will be a different version of Will Ospreay. But if you're smart and you're advising him and you had an agent or something like that, they'd probably say take the WWE money and it'd be better for your body probably long term. I think working that style. Ospreay, he's not fucking smart enough to do that. He's probably going to end up signing for AEW, but also carry on working in New Japan. You'll find a way to do another 4 retirement tours of the British Indies. He'll end up in TNA as well. I would rule Punk, I very much doubt lands in TNA. Ospreay, absolutely as part of some deal with some other package. Like he decides he wants to do split his time between TNA and New Japan or something like that. Anything's on the table with him. You could never know what call that bloke's going to fucking make.
Which really, given all, and we've seen it himself in terms of his body and his welfare, he can't be doing that flying everywhere business. That needs to be put to an end. And the impressions of this year, and this goes into the Bound for Glory card, I'm just going to have one of those years where I'm going to win Wrestler of the Year, and I'll have all these brilliant matches and all these different promotions. I'm going to do Noah. I'm going to do Impact. I'll be New Japan. I'll be in AEW. I'll have wrestled Wembley Stadium. You know, all of these very tick box things. Basically, you get out of the way before you can kind of entirely settle down. And like you, I mean, what is the best from a business decision for him to make the most money? It was WWE by a country mile, really, in many ways. AEW, I think that's the issue. Is then when you're AEW, you've not really left New Japan. You can always go back in there. They'll always have you in there. It just seems to be, I don't want to say it's a spin-off of New Japan like Frasier was to Cheers, but in some ways, like...
Well, Frasier is to Frasier.
It is exactly what Frasier is to Frasier at this point. Still haven't seen any of that show.
Yeah, Nicholas Lyndhurst never gets normal, mate. It's like a weird crossover of Only Fools and Horses and Frasier. It's there's something wrong about it.
It's just the money I think he should be getting at this stage for what you would want of like, this is like the biggest British wrestling star that you can sign, and you're going to get that person and you're going to put them all over your TV. I can see a point where they get their Sky Sports deal back and the rest of it. And it's the thing that they would hope would regenerate stuff over here of going, well, we've got Will Ospreay now, because they'll have, you know, regardless of what Brent Council have said or haven't said regarding attendance figures and the rest of it, the idea of AEW running Wembley Stadium was enough, I think, to kind of scare them about taking like the UK for granted. This feels like an easier way of them getting around that as well, even if creatively there's a whole load of other stuff that I would be like kind of very uncertain about. But
it's not impossible. It's very much like the Walter thing. You know, how long did we hear, Walter doesn't want to move to the United States? It's never happening. Now Ospreay is making those kind of same talk about how, you know, he's open to signing with WWE. He's he would be maybe interested in relocating to the United States. It's definitely a possibility at this point. But on that note, JP, should we talk some Ospreay and his massive attempt this year to push all of our Wrestler of the Year ballots? I don't think there's going to be much doubt if you're not WWE brained this year when it comes to our year-end awards. I'm sure all four of us are going to be voting the same, voting for Will Ospreay and our Wrestler of the Year ballots. But he is the Wrestler of the Year at this point. I think if you're talking Observer Awards, when you're talking is Flair Fez the in-ring one? What's the overall one and one's the in-ring one? I always get them mixed up. He's 100% your in-ring one as far as Wrestler of the Year Ospreay goes, and he continued that fine legacy on this Bound for Glory show, which you should probably talk a little bit as well, JP, while we're on the TNA Impact subject. We said on the weekend show Ospreay and Speedball had a floor of 4 stars, and I think that remained absolutely true. 100% sure where I'd land at the end of it, but fucking cracker of a match. Absolutely the match of the night for the show, and was exactly what you'd expect when you put Will Ospreay in a ring with Speedball Mike Bailey. And like you say, Will Ospreay's having the year he's having, and whether it is his gap year before he signs a proper contract somewhere and goes full time somewhere, or it is just them just trying to rack up those Wrestler of the Year points. It was another one to add on. Could have gone in there where took it easy, done the Monsters Ball match or something, or done that weird Battle Royal thing they did. Now goes in with Speedball, and them two had another corker of a match. I thought, JP, absolutely the highlight of this Bound for Glory show for me.
Oh, it was, yeah, definitely. I mean, it was a really, this is the thing, say a really great match. It's an exhibition match ultimately, and this is supposed you can think you say about a few of these. But it's as good as exhibition wrestling is going to kind of get, because we're both big
time shootout wrestling, you know.
Yeah, exactly. 2 guys going out there in the middle of the card, having a brilliant match that is going to be highlighting the best of Mike Bailey, and Will Ospreay gets to tick the box of, okay, we were supposed to wrestle, but you know there was the injury problem to Bailey, wasn't there? So they've ended up coming back and having this match there, and it was as you'd expect. I mean, just incredibly smooth, as much as anything, and it was worked at a pace that Ospreay clearly kind of liked as well. And I think that is when you look at it, I think this was, I suppose, I really enjoyed it. I can't say like I absolutely loved it or I go 5 stars on it, partly because I feel
Oh no, we'll go seen.
Yeah, I've kind of seen this type of match, but we've kind of generally graded a lot of, I was going to say TNA pay-per-views / Impact. This is going to get confusing for the next couple of months. We'll just say TNA from now on in, because that's what they want to be called.
It's TNA.
And normally they have like 3 really good matches, and in lieu of a really good X Division match, this kind of ticked that box. Crowd were well into Ospreay. They knew they were seeing like, okay, we get to see someone who is like a big star, and you can tell that star is just like, it's risen, and everything else. And you know, we're talking about another one of his matches that he had only the week before that you were at live as well. One that gets 5.5 stars. And I heard you say that you couldn't remember it the moment you'd reached the pub afterwards, but we'll talk about that in a bit. But yeah, it was a brilliant match. Worked really, really like quickly and with pace, and some great reversals because Mike Bailey's fucking tremendous. Yeah, great. Yeah,
they didn't put a foot wrong. Like, it was just, you know, Ewan says it in the chat, we went 4.75, wishes they built a better story. Yeah, I mean, I can see that. This was just, you know, quote, I know it's happened before, but quote unquote dream match between two of the best in the world, just doing what they do. I think that was you mentioned the pace in there. That was you know, they had to do that. They had to just literally, there was no like real slow build. They just straight away, we were into sequences, and we were into like, you know, fresh sequences with two fresh wrestlers that, you know, it's the type of stuff that like a knobhead will see a gif of on Twitter and be like, oh, what's unrealistic? Like, no, it's not unrealistic, because none of them took any damage yet. So of course they're going to be reversing each other's stuff. Of course they're going to be like doing stuff like that. Even like I saw some fucking bore moaning about the super kick spot, which was like, got the biggest reaction in the match. It was fucking awesome. And like, they're like, oh, well, a kick knock somebody out in UFC this week, so it's unrealistic. It's like, they're the rules you're going to apply to wrestling. Then like a punch knocks people out in UFC half the time. You know what I mean? Like, most UFC matches finish in quite boring fashion. We probably don't want to do that in wrestling. I think what you want to do is have wrestling make sense within its own world. And I think these two are two of the best at making that stuff make sense in its own world. Like, I think people view Ospreay through the lens of flippy-do wrestler. I think he talked about it in an interview of 5 years ago, and there isn't actually that much flippy doing what he does anymore. He is more of a hard-hitting heavyweight. It is more about, you know, you get those fun exchanges at the start of the match, which started this, and you get your daft stuff like the super kick stuff, which I can understand not being to everyone's taste, but like I say, criticism goes too far sometimes. But then it always has that hot closing main eventer stretch where, like, you know, it's built on counters, built on logic, like that point where they were both in the corner and Speedball was about to hit like his knockout kick or whatever it's called, and Ospreay looked like bang to rights, and Ospreay just kind of wakes up and runs through and hits him with the hidden blade. Like, that was fucking brilliant. The fact that then like he went for his finish, and then Bailey reversed it, didn't he, to like the Rana at that point?
Yeah,
like that was another, like, it's playing with that momentum shift, what you expect to see in a match, and then playing against those expectations. Like, that's what it's not just kicking out of moves and reversals. The top wrestlers in the world, and Okada was always great at it, great at that. It's about the momentum change, and it's about playing on your expectations of what's going to happen next. And then because Bailey manages to get the reversal and comes so close, Bailey looks good. And then because Ospreay, and we've seen it in quite a few of these big Ospreay matches, you know, it takes, you know, the hidden blade, and it takes the fucking Stormbreaker. It takes like 3 big fucking strikes to finally put him down, and it makes Ospreay look like a mean bastard, because basically Bailey's already dead when he picks him up yet again, you know, to just get that one final fucking death blow on him and hit his finish. Like, but that makes Ospreay look like a killer. It makes Bailey look like someone who you had to basically kill him to beat him. And it actually, for a match where it was an exhibition and it's New Japan's biggest star against, or one of their biggest stars, or at least their biggest Western star probably at this point, against, you know, Mike Bailey, who's lower on the total pole in New Japan, it had me buying it for a few seconds of it could go either way. And that's all you want out of a big match. So Bailey came out looking great, Ospreay came out looking great, and Ospreay should win, and Bailey, you know, again, has a quiet case himself for like one of the best wrestlers of the year as well. Like, I'd probably go as high as 4.5 on it. I was floating between 4.25 and 4.5 on it. Wouldn't go anywhere near 5, with it being a relatively cold match, but 4.5 star match, which seems to be, I said 4 was the floor coming to this, seems to be the floor for Ospreay at this point for his big matches, and absolutely delivered me. And that's on a, like I say, a TNA / Impact show. We're talking about a 4.5 star match. So that's what you get when you've got an Ospreay willing to come and work your shows, you know, like they got that.
And as a side note to all of this, I mean, Bailey can't be forgotten in this. He's been brilliant for a while. We were lucky when he wasn't allowed to work in the US, we got to see him loads over here. So, and there was that time between Japan and the UK where he really kind of developed. And there was obviously he was able to work with loads of great workers over here as well. And it does feel like, okay, this is a guy you should go with in terms of if you want to have a good match on one of those like monthly Impact Plus shows, whether that'll be rebranded, God knows. You could do a lot worse now, Alex Shelley versus Mike Bailey in a main event. Because I think this is the kind of stuff where you go, actually, this guy is fucking tremendous, and we should be utilizing him more. Don't look at the size. Yeah. The size doesn't matter, because generally it doesn't matter in this company. So you might as well get him in there and in like kind of make hay while the sun shines, because you come out of this going, actually, I want to see more Mike Bailey.
Yeah, he should be there in ring ace, which he is. He should be kind of positioned in that way as well. I suppose, what are the big matches we should talk about? I suppose the main event, Alex Shelley and Josh Alexander. Did that surprise you to? Like I say, we talked on went through the betting odds, didn't we, on the weekend show? Maybe we could have cleaned up there if we'd have gone with Alex Shelley walking out here as Impact champion. Still didn't expect that, but solid main event. Like we said, it needed to be different than the Ospreay Speedball match to kind of work. And I think it being there's like 3 matches down the line, wasn't it? There was 2 between the Ospreay match and this kind of helped as well. It was a good show in that way, that it was kind of anchored by like 3 biggish singles matches, if you want to count Saban and Kenta at as like the main show kind of open as well. But yeah, I thought in a different way, a very, very good tidy little match, and with a result that maybe I didn't expect.
That was it. I didn't see the result coming at all, because I just thought Josh Alexander seemed to be their guy, like the guy that they wanted to go with as their race, particularly at a time when they've not had as many big people around this as well. And it did make me kind of think, oh, okay, this is interesting, just because it was a very definitive win. I have to say, as a match, I liked it. I thought, again, we're talking about pace. This was obviously a much slower pace, but it was worked very sensibly from 2 guys who are very good. And it was playing into the logic of Shelley working over Josh Alexander's arm, because he's had the surgery on it recently, but it makes sense to go after it as well. But it was like, the 2 shell shocks and he won. And I was like, Jesus, okay, I didn't really see that coming on there. And then you've got Alexander versus Ospreay, which you'd imagine he'd be losing, or has already lost at the TV tapings that have happened. I don't know the spoilers for those yet. So that was kind of interesting. It's not to say that the Alex Shelley run is bad. I just kind of thought, well, Alexander was their guy, so they'd be going back to it. So I did start to think, okay, how much longer is Josh Alexander going to be there for? Because we've seen him work for New Japan already. That would be, there comes a point of, unless they're putting in a lot of time, money and resources into what TNA is going to be, for Anthem, like what he's kind of done everything he can do with them in their current incarnation and their current level. New Japan feels like a good fit for him to kind of really boost his name up, while still possibly being in a prominent position as like a good foreign wrestler who can have good matches with pretty much most of the roster there. So I was surprised by this, and that's where immediately my head went. I was like, oh, okay, is Josh Alexander going to be around here? Are they going to play a storyline where he's not quite ready to come back? And again, that's not to like denigrate Alex Shelley. I mean, I thought for this, if I'm going ratings wise, probably about 3.75. I thought it was like that's a very good, very good main event, but not a great main event. And like I say, the finish kind of came out of nowhere. And even though there was a lot of buffer time between this, it did feel like somewhat of a tired crowd by this stage as well, which I don't think necessarily helped with it. And
but we were going for the big show spectacle. And to be fair, the crowd when they did the TNA announcements after this, they came alive at the very least for that. But no, I thought they were solid enough. Yeah, it's one of those matches I don't have a huge amount of notes on. Kind of concur with what you're saying there. A couple of pros, doing it. It's the type of match I think Gareth would prefer to like the Ospreay Speedball match, where a couple of pros being pros, and hitting all the little things, and like I say, paying off the Josh Alexander injury, and Alex Shelley just being great and like shepherding the match as well. It was just another bow on this pay-per-view, really, which is kind of more the talking point, the overall show, because the show itself, it did have a little bit of everything. Andy's asking in the chat there, did they do a once and four match? You bet your ass they did. Oh, yeah. Did they do a flippy tag? They absolutely did. A couple of solid enough women's matches in there as well. Where else do you want to go on the show, JP? What were your highlights and lowlights from this thing?
I like the tag match, even if it wasn't a great tag match. I thought it was good and it was well done between four
ABC
guys.
And Rascals.
Yeah, ABC and Rascals there as well. Even though there's that part of me goes, I want to see Chris Bay and Ace Austin as single stars. I want to see Trey Miguel as a single star as well there. But
that match was just close your eyes, imagine the Rascals versus ABC in a 3.5 star, going to go out there, do a few moves, and there's going to be some. I mean, I always think Trey Miguel stands out. You're right, among like the four in there, and I always like his stuff. But yeah, just a couple of solid teams doing maybe out there for about 10 minutes or so, weren't they? Solid little match.
It was that was it. It was a good, solid match, but it wasn't designed to kind of overachieve or take anything away from anything else. I mean, it was. But I thought, probably about 3.5 for that one, going up to 3.75. Like I thought there was a lot of stuff that was good in there as well because they are kind of like well worked. I don't know what you made of the Trinity versus Mickie James. It kind of, I don't know. Yeah, it was a bit of a mess at points. It didn't overstay its welcome. I think that's probably that
weird botch on like the X Factor thing in the court on the ropes.
Yeah.
Just like when they hugged at the end of the match, it felt like it was almost like a relief hug.
Yeah,
Mickey's still good. Don't get me wrong. She's not washed in any way. I just think there's a ceiling with Trinity. We were saying it on the previous show, and it, like I say, we go into these big shows and go, oh, it's Trinity versus insert like Jordan Grace or previously Deonna Purrazzo or whoever, and then it turns out to be solid little 3.25 star, maybe even 3-star match, and she doesn't really, I like the the emotion of, oh, we're friends, and she's a mentor to me, and like the commentary was putting over the idea of, oh, they almost don't want to hurt each other out there, and it played into the finish with Mickie James kind of falling into Trinity's arms as soon as like the count came, but it didn't really move me again on this idea of Trinity being the super worker that was held down into it. She's solid. She's fine. She's not really like the world on fire, I don't think, in this TNA Impact Knockout Championship run.
Yeah, I don't know if she feels like she's a natural fit here. I don't know as much as anything else. She's
awkward as well. That's probably part of where the boxers come from as well. She's a bit awkward, I think.
I have always found her. There's choreographed and then there's overly choreographed. And there's so much about her that I mean, I can imagine because that's the system that she grew up in as as a wrestler in that. And so everything is like choreographed within a kind of like inch of its life, which kind of takes away you don't get her to like what her instinct's going to be like. I don't even know if I want to see that. Like the possibility could be like, that could be all, if things start going really badly wrong, how is she going to be able to cope? Like that's the kind of stuff where I'd be like, I'm not really sure about this. Looks like they're setting up her and Jordan Grace because she won the Battle Royal thing that was there as well.
Explains why Jordan wasn't on the show because they're setting that up going forward. Yeah, it's a good match, innit? You want Jordan Grace in that mix, but can't say I've seen anything from Trinity that made my life. But yeah, Jordan Grace won the gold. I've got nothing to say on that. Juventud Guerrera turned up and it put a smile on my face. That's about all I've got.
Sunny Kisses there.
Oh, that's another notable one. Yeah. Good.
It's the right place for Sunny Kiss. Yeah,
absolutely. There's so many people like it's like gets into the AEW conversation we're about to have. So we're gonna get there in a minute. People are probably heads are spinning here because we're doing Impact here when we normally do it like hour 3. But we'll get to AEW in a minute. But Sunny Kiss is the app like Sidgwick on a What Culture was talking about this, like the idea of like Tony Khan he has to have everyone, doesn't he? And it's like. I think the example Sidgwick used was like, remember like CM Punk in IWA Mid-South? So if the IWA Mid-South CM Punk turned up now, Tony Khan would sign him right away. We wouldn't get the indie run where CM Punk found himself, became the big star in ROH, used that star power, quality, whatever you want to word it, to then get himself over and do the B, and things kind of happen naturally. He'd be signed by Tony Khan on Rampage, like with it, and you'd get sick of him, and you'd see him lose all the time on TV, and then the megastar CM Punk run would never come. That's a real problem AEW have got. Sunny Kiss, maybe it's not going to be CM Punk, don't get me wrong, but similar thing. Like just better off in a smaller promotion to actually develop.
Yeah, and I think that's the crucial thing. And there's loads of people like that, we'd say, within AEW and everything else for that. But yeah, there's not really a whole lot to say about that. And I suppose, I mean, I'd say the most, like, I mean, there's other matches on the card that I don't think, like, if you never see Kenta versus Chris Sabin, you're all right. It's not that it's horrible or anything bad. The Monsters Ball match is exactly what you'd expect it to be. But in some ways, that's what it was there to deliver. Did it deliver, like, sort of at least 3 good matches? Yeah. Was there anything that shit the bed? No. And you go, well, there's a lot of years in its history where that hasn't been the case. So in some ways, I'm grateful for small mercies because I've got such a lower expectation level for it. And if they're going to try something...
It's still a shit. It's still like I kind of have a weird nostalgia for it, but it makes no sense. It's like I think it's the idea that they're in this darkened room, and it's not even like they're in like prison cells. They just find 4 random rooms in the arena, and then like
or the same room recorded 4 different times with
all of that. But then you've got like Rhino coming out like rubbing his eyes, and he's in like he's like in his full gear for 24 hours. Like I'm just asking, like, where did he have a shit? Did they get a bucket? Like, where's he pissing? Like, what's going on in this room? Yeah. Like, he busts out, you know? Like, it doesn't feel like, you know, any athletic commission would sanction this, where they come out thirsty, hungry, and, you know, stinking from a 24-hour stint, sitting in a room with their own piss and shit. Like, what's the... doesn't really... it's a good idea for, like, a film or something like that. It's a Saw type idea. In wrestling, it's never really worked, has it? Or, you know, it's not...
Or
an
IRA prisoner in the 70s kind of reference for that as well. But I always seem to come back to that. H-block.
It's a bit that in it. But yeah, the match itself, I didn't have much on. Other than the fact that it was notable PCO went over, considering he was supposed to be leaving Impact / TNA. I'm guessing that's not happening now based on on reports. But yeah, outside that, didn't have much on much else. Like I say, Chris Sabin and Kenta had a solid opener, probably exceeded my expectations, but not by much. You know, 3.5-star match where Kenta seemed slightly arse, but you know, leaned very much on the old Bullet Club bollocks and you know, cheating and all that stuff, which you're you know, wouldn't have got from Prime Kenta, but well, that's who he is at this point in his career. If you
get a chance to see it, it's up on YouTube as well. The Hall of Fame speech from Mike Tenay.
That's the last thing well worth mentioning, yeah. The only thing I'd say is Mike Tenay did feel a little bit like he was reading his script a little bit, but I get it. It's an emotional moment, and, you know, there's things you want to get in. And I did forget halfway through, because he's putting over Don West, did an amazing job, and then randomly started talking about Bobby Heenan and all the other commentators where it was like, oh, yeah, they're both going in. I'd kind of forgotten that, but it was like, it was for both of them, and it should be, because, you know, they are... Yeah, that's another TNA move, isn't it? Them those lads getting taken off commentary, you know, or specifically Don West more than Tenay. I think if he'd have wanted the job back, he could have had it at any point he wanted. But it was nice, you know, hearing that from him. Very interesting. He name checked a lot of different commentators. No Tony Schiavone reference. No. The heat from early TNA still there when Schiavone came in and did that heel run. But genuinely nice moments, and yeah, all the Don West family was there as well, wasn't it? And you know, we were that TNA nostalgia has creeped in. A lot of it is Tenay and West, isn't it? A lot of that is like something that in the moment, and I think Tenay kind of alluded to it. The hardcore circles, the dirt sheets, your Meltzers. A lot of people wrote Don West off, and you know, he won everybody over with sheer enthusiasm, didn't he? And even if you didn't enjoy it at the time, I think most people kind of look back on it and go, it was a cool, different thing that TNA had.
I was never, and I suppose in many ways, Tenay as lead announcer that's not the best use of him, I would say. I think the best use of him is very much like as the color guy. I suppose he was in WCW, but that's not the hand that TNA had at that point in time. And it was as good a person as you were ever going to hire. And Don West, as you said, did like such a tremendous job as well. It would be nice if they could do that every once in a while and just bring Mike Tenay back onto commentary for like one-off matches. In the same way, like a good version of Jim Ross, effectively, if they could do that and just bring him back in to do like one-off matches and like main event commentary and stuff like that. Because I think
I'd take it.
Yeah, he'd be great as like a sidekick to Ray Walt and Hannafin, like I think as well, and possibly hopefully temper some of the. I like them as a commentary duo, but there was still a lot of Ray Walt playing heel, and I think that's one of the things I always genuinely liked about West and Tenay was you got the impression they got on. They were good. They were like mates who commentated together, and that they actually liked each other, and they both worked hard, and that they didn't have to hate each other. And I know when West did the heel turn thing, he was fucking tremendous at it. But yeah, that's a lovely. If you haven't seen it, I'd highly recommend watching the speech from there.
And Tracy Bucks' speech, which, you know, they definitely, it's one of them. They over-egged the pudding a bit with, you know, when she came in, the women's division was this, and then when she left, wow, boy, was it good. And I'm sitting there thinking, don't know how much that was to do with Tracy Brooks, but okay.
That was no. They did that with Gail King and Awesome Kong, didn't they?
And she was great in ROH. Always enjoyed her contributions there. So, nice moment for her as well. But unless you've got anything else on TNA / so in fact, I'm probably going to be going to there. In fact, I am. We've now officially booked our hotel and transport. That's how they swept me up, JP. Now I'm going to see TNA in Coventry on Saturday. They've got the UK tour there this weekend. The card doesn't look like it's particularly up to much at the minute, but I think they're going to be taping it and releasing it on like one of their their specials type of thing. I think the pay-per-view itself airs on Impact / TNA's on-demand service. I don't know if you tempted to return to your old haunt of Coventry, JP.
I had a look at the tickets, but there was all the cheaper ones had gone, which normally means that kind of dies a death for me. That being the case, but the venue they're running looks pretty good. Like it holds a couple of thousand there as well. I mean, and I don't know. It didn't seem like there were tickets available for the first night, so I'm somewhat intrigued. Is the thing about how this kind of does and everything else, and having Ospreay on there, and I know that they've got it, and they've got like people like Leon Slater and whatnot on there as well on some of the cards.
Just looking at the lineups here, we've got won't go through like the full thing, but we've got for the Friday. So it's the Friday one in Newcastle, where I've been told it's not really Newcastle. It's one of those venues where it's a couple of Walker Dome, couple of buses from Newcastle proper to get yourself there. Sounds like it's just in like the middle of like a housing estate, this place. But that's got Ospreay, Eddie Edwards on it with such machine guns against Moose and Brian Myers, Jordan Gage, Danny Luna. So Danny Luna getting a spot, Subculture taking on Eric Young and Josh Alexander, so good spot for the boys there. Giselle Shaw working Alex Windsor, which will be obviously we'll Giselle over a lot for Rev Pro. Joe Hendry, Simon Miller is on that show as well, because they've been building that up on Twitter and pretending they have like real beef or whatever. I don't know. That's a thing. But I'm quite good. It's HMV Empire in Coventry, the one I'm going to be at on Saturday. So if anyone's around, say hello, and I'll be on the ground floor. JP, I'm going to be a TNA fan going forward. That's going to be my new thing. 2005, ROH Benno was rolling in his grave.
Well, especially when we get total Nonstop Punk, then we're there, aren't we?
Oh, honestly, that would sell me. But on that note, we should move on from Impact and talk some AEW, JP, and the 1,000 trillion shows that were on this weekend as AEW TV. Fucking hell! Like, did you get all your homework done? Have you got Battle of the Belts finished yet, JP? I've been told this week you're not a real journalist unless you watch every minute of AEW TV that's on. Also, every minute of WWE TV. Just make sure you fit that into two lads. Make sure we're all watching main event and whatever 205 Live is called now.
Who is saying this exactly? I'll have fucking words with them and say you try it. The internet, exactly. It's like, do you watch all of this? No, then shut up. Like, you've touched upon the big kind of issue is and I was thinking about this because we obviously there was a conversation about this on the weekend show as well, about it, and I know how I feel. We're kind of quite similar to it, that there is the tone of these shows are slightly all over the place. I have to say, again, I kind of enjoyed Collision, but it's almost at the minute, it's just too much wrestling. And there's too much good wrestling, which I know sounds awful. It just means there's a lot of it that just doesn't stand out at the end of a week. By the time you've seen Collision, you're kind of forgetting about Rampage, and that was only on the day before. And Wade has his 7 days. Like, it is a very clear pattern of when people miss Collision, they don't catch up. It's like, if you don't watch it on Saturday, you probably don't. By the time it gets to Monday, you're like, whatever. You wash your hands of it. Like, there seems to be a pattern of that. And to be fair, I did see some of the numbers from the UK, and it does sound like, I think I'll get them up in a minute. Like on the ITV player, people, I think they're catching up with Collision about half the numbers they catch up like a regular Dynamite episode. So there are people, still out there going for it, but it's always going to be less than. It's like, for us, it's not a gigantic problem. We've got a Patreon to run, we've got a podcast to do every week, so
we will keep up to date with everything. But like I've said a few times, and I said that on the weekend show, if I didn't have this podcast, would I watch Collision? This week, when did it slip to me watching Collision? Sunday night, last night it was. I was almost going to leave it till this morning, but I was a little bit worried about getting it in before. Yeah, like Battle of the Belts. Like I watched, if I'm honest, the first half hour of and realised there was nothing else to have note to cover, and I turned it off because I'm a sane person with other interests and things to do in my life. The watch book in the end of Battle of the Belts, but I tried because it's our job, JP, and we try and keep up with it. But like I say, if I wasn't covering this stuff as a podcast, then I might have thrown the towel in on Collision. I might have just gone, is Bryan Danielson versus Andrade going on YouTube? Cool, I'll watch it there. Bit like what I do with Raw sometimes. There's a match there people have noted. I'll throw the YouTube highlights on. And again, I say that same as you, as someone who did mostly enjoy Collision this week, and a lot of AEW tropes in there and issues in there that I'm sure we can talk about as well. But generally speaking, it wasn't an unenjoyable show, especially the first half hour into like first 40 minutes or so, even once you include like or really first hour, once you include like the Eddie Kingston promo and all of that stuff that I really enjoyed too. It's just, there's a definite like knock-on effect, I think, with Collision of like, clearly AEW's attendance problems are linked to it being a cold product, but also linked to the fact that now they've got two shows a week to run in different places, and you're going to burn places out. And generally, I think Collision did a decent number last week. I think the numbers though speak for themselves. Those days of us talking of AEW overall getting past that 1 million point, or the demo starting to get towards like Raw numbers. I think when you deliver this much product, you've kind of got to accept, like WWE, it's like you just throw at content for content's sake, and we're in very much the content era of AEW, where I don't think even they can reasonably expect everybody to get through Battle of the Belts at what time was it in America by the time that fucking thing aired on Saturday night. It's just it's not gonna happen. It's not reasonable, is it? And I think that's the thing. I always say it, like, if I it makes, I think wrestling fans will dumb things down and go, well, it's more wrestling, what's your problem? You'd like it if there were more football games. You'd like it if, there were more episodes of your favorite TV show. I was like, hang on. If The Wire was on 5 times a week and each episode was 3 hours, I think I'd eventually get sick of The Wire too. That's like, you can't, it is such a thing as too much of a good thing. And there's Garrett's talked about this in the past, where it's like, once you do get stretched and you do get those 3 or 4 hours behind, you do get those 5 hours behind, and you get to that point where how many of us were like, oh, I can't wait for that Wednesday Dynamite, and we were all completists about watching it, when there's another 3 hours to 4 hours of TV a week, and you don't see that, at what point as a fan you start going, well, I've missed that. So, you kind of throw the towel in and go, I'm never going to catch up, and you almost give up, don't you? And then the Dynamite viewing starts to slip as well. And, there is that, obviously they're trying to get a big TV deal, and obviously Tony Khan's got plenty of masters to serve, and I don't think they can, unless the network says so, they're not going to be cutting Collision anytime soon. But these are all the knock-on effects of its very existence at this point. And it's the kind of the thing we worried about when it was first announced way back when.
Yeah, and we are, as he's mentioned, we're very much into the content era with this as well. And I think the thing overall that I kind of took away from it was, like, say, Rampage, for example. I only watched the Mystico Rocky Romero match because there was a novelty value of having Mystico.
Really enjoyed that. But that's different. Just it wasn't a 5-star match by any means, and I'm sure there's better equivalents happening in CML, including between those two. But something different that you could put out there, the referee being different, it being 2 out of 3 falls, and just being a change of pace. I did actually, you're right, you point it out, and we're going to point it out across like the Rampage and Collision shows, like enjoyable, absolutely, and different, than anything you'd see otherwise on like an American TV wrestling, apart from when Court Bauer occasionally reaches into his lucha bag.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is, I think having that on there is, particularly the presentation of it, I think was the thing that was kind of necessarily the big success story of it. But then I found, like, let's say, watching Collision, the stuff that I liked in terms of, okay, there's at least we're trying to set. I thought, okay, we're going to Malachi Black versus Bryan Danielson to carry on the theme of having people in that upper mid card taking on established guys and trying to kind of elevate.
That's a positive.
Okay, that is a positive, and it's a good thing. I thought they convoluted the whole thing by the end, where I thought, are we just getting another 5-on-5 match? It's like, I could care less about that I thought that
it was the House of Black show, wasn't it? Collision.
Yeah.
Like, fucking hell.
It really was for that. I was like, after I was like, oh, okay. But I think like if we're talking about like the kind of bigger issue is there's not enough. In some ways, it's a weird product because you've got some skits between people who are like normal human beings, and other skits like Tony Storm and the stuff with Roderick Strong, where you're getting the HR department involved because you're fearing for these people and their mental health. And you've also then got a kind of a very structured, quite formulaic way of doing things. There's very rarely do they have show-long storylines of any real consequence. It's very much like kind of a segmented show of there's this person getting their TV time, there's this person getting their TV time, then we're going to have this like interspersed with very good TV wrestling. But I think the thing we're discovering is that good TV wrestling isn't enough, particularly in some ways. If you're producing too much of it, none of it stands out. Again, it's like I'm trying to think of that Megamind where like, The Incredibles. If everyone's a superhero, then nobody is. Like, and it's this idea, there is, and we even spoke about this on the Spooky Moment show, on the Patreon with Robert Brooker, and he said, actually, as part of the problem, there's so much good wrestling that it does all kind of blur into one, and that's really true. Like, there's stuff from Dynamite we spoke about on the weekend show that's completely gone from my mind. I'd have to look see who was on the show for me to remember, and I think that's the thing about this. If you're viewing this as a television product, you've got all of these hours, all of these titles, about 50 odd people you have to keep up with in this one company in one way, shape or form. That's a lot. And they all have their own individual storylines. That's a lot to ask of your audience as well to keep up. Like, we shouldn't need the spreadsheet by that point in time. And there is that stage where the quality control isn't there because it feels like we're going to have this in, or we need to have, because Adam Cole segments have done well, we need to have this stuff in with Roderick Strong 3 weeks in a row, and and you're like, seriously, it almost needs to be thought. Either some of the shows, they all kind of merge into one, tonally and presentation wise, which is disorientating. Plus, some of the characters just shouldn't be existing in the same universe, so it's kind of weird. It's too similar, but there's also parts of it that are entirely different. And I just think it makes for quite a weird combination. Like, I watch it and I come away, and we spoke again on the weekend show and we were talking about it. I'm away knackered. And that's how I felt. I've like, even when I hit Battle of the Belts, I'm sure you were the same first half hour and thought, fuck this. I don't need to see it. This isn't like, if I miss this, is this the end of the world? Is there someone who's going to go, right, I'm unsubscribing to Grapple Spotlight now? Why? Well, you never gave me an in-depth review of Chris Statlander versus Willow Nightingale. Two wrestlers who I like. But that match doesn't feel remotely special, and it feels like it could have been something like a bigger deal. It's like, if you'd had that on the pay-per-view, I would have been happier. And in some ways, that's the problem, is I kind of want to see that really tremendous stuff like on that, but I want to see like kind of like an interesting build to some of this stuff. And I think we're missing.
Well, that's the thing
bits of it.
With like this week's Collision. And even go back to Dynamite, like, it's like the conversation we had there. There's plenty of positive you can say about like last week's Dynamite. Kenny Omega in a singles match. How many times have we asked for that and we got it versus Kyle Fletcher, and it was very good. You know, Pentagon and Jay White. Pentagon's not really for my tastes anymore, as we talked about on the weekend show, but went out there, had a pretty good match. Also, you know, to JP's point there, like loads of, you know, tonal shifts on it. A lot of, I think my biggest complaint on Dynamite this week was just the sheer amount of comedy that we kind of were getting. It's bleeding in everywhere. It's not just, you know, Adam Cole and MJF. It is Tony Storm. It's even stuff I like the the Gun Club stuff with as much as I like Jay White, you know, his stuff in there. Danhausen's starting to come back to TV, so you're going to get like another like comedic, light-hearted element in there, and even some of the good stuff like your Christian. There's a bit of a wink and a nudge to the stuff that he's doing there. There's a bit of that with like the Don Callis stuff. It's just a weird promotion right now where, yes, there are great matches because there's always going to be with this roster. And yes, there's stuff that I love on the shows, like we talked about on weekend shows. Sting's promo was a big highlight from Dynamite. Eddie Kingston's promo for this week's Collision gave me that too. It's giving me a lot of things I like, but it's also giving me a lot of things that I'm just like, that I don't like, or I'm just, like you said there, nonplussed by and just don't care about. And I think that just speaks to the overall problem, though. I think, as like fans and like this hardcore fan kind of bubble of all these, we're all in these disparate places having these conversations. I think everyone is coming up with their own different reasons of what's going wrong, with AEW. You hear like a Wade Keller complaining about like, Danielson and Andrade didn't get any build, therefore why would you care about it? Or the main events of Collision, that's another great example, until Big Bill came out, I was like, I don't even know what the main event is of Collision this week. There are basics like that AEW get wrong. A lot of like similar matches coming back and forth. That happened on Collision. A lot of jobber matches on there. Dynamite had a lot of like, oh, here's a big man and he's going to squash somebody smaller. It's like, okay, give that to one guy. You're doing that with Wardlow. You didn't need to bring Lance Archer back. That's another valid criticism. There's all these valid criticisms come from different corners, but I think at its crux, I think the issue is just we're all trying to logic our way out of the obvious, and the obvious is there's just a fucking lot of AEW to watch, and we're all exhausted by it. No matter how good it is, we're all exhausted by it, and we're all like, take this week's Collision for example. Like, if I ran through like the run sheet of the show, it was a good show. I thought Bryan and Andrade killed it in the open. You want to call that a dream match? I think that's a bit strong. I think that's when Tony Khan, he's a promoter, but when you over promise, and it seems bad to say, but under deliver when you scream something's going to be a dream match, and then it's like, oh no, it's Danielson and Andrade. Sounds like a great match, but we have seen it before, and like when you say dream match, the stakes are quite high, aren't they? You think who's coming in from elsewhere to work Danielson? Is Blue Panther Jr. finally got to get his Danielson match or something like that? But no, still though, what they delivered in ring was fucking fantastic. It was a 20-minute Bryan Danielson match on primetime TV. Of course, it's going to be fantastic. Andrade was great in the match as well, so I really enjoyed that. I could do without seeing any more Sky Blue matches, but Hollywood, in there getting a little, little payday. Nice to see.
I showed that to Vicky, and she was like, "Is she in AEW now?" And I was like, "She's just getting tryouts." Apparently, she had epilepsy. She has epilepsy, so that's why the WWE one hasn't happened, but. I'd get in, but then again, it was a 2-minute Sky Blue match where she's doing the same gimmick as Julia Hart. So.
She's just never getting over this. Sky Blue, but going through the show, Austin and Colton going against the Outrunners. I got a good kick out of the Outrunners. They feel like very much a Rampage act, but fine. They fill the job as kind of you feel like early 90s WWF to TV job.
Beverly Brothers vibe.
Basically Beverly Brothers, yeah, that's probably what we're going for. Eddie Kingston and Jeff Jarrett. I ironically love Jeff. So in fact, to be honest, I think we've pushed past the ironic stage now. I think I just love Jeff. I liked it. I understand the criticism of it, that it was a little bit too ha-ha for Eddie Kingston to be involved, and there was a lot of ridiculous things set up there, like it was a concession brand ball, so there's got to be like fucking hot dog sauce over here, and there's got to be like stuff like it's got to be very convoluted. Is probably the word for this one. And to be honest, as much as I enjoyed the match, the stipulation didn't make any sense either. Like, why would Eddie Kingston be allowing Jeff Jarrett to wrestle him? Because and again, this was set up on Rampage, by the way. So if you missed Rampage, fuck you. You're not going to know this was coming. But apparently Eddie Kingston had agreed to say if Jeff Jarrett beat him, then Jay Lethal gets an ROH title shot, which A, makes Eddie Kingston look like a schmuck, B, makes Jay Lethal look like a schmuck, and the only person who looks good at coming out of this is Jeff Jarrett, because he's just got a win over the ROH champion. All the while,
water is wet, sky is blue.
Well, he always wins. Jeff always wins.
Jeff
no matter
Jarrett
what.
wins.
But like, as much as I did enjoy it, and it made logical sense once the match started. Well, yeah, it's a street fight, so I guess the lads will get involved, and I guess Eddie Kingston will get overwhelmed. I also think in a logical wrestling promotion, they should probably still get fined for that. There should be some consequences to that. But at the end of the day, it's probably not the best booking in the world to give Jeff a scalp over Eddie Kingston at this point, when Eddie Kingston's on a bit of a decent streak, to set up a Jay Lethal match that Eddie Kingston's surely going to win. Like, so there's like something I like there, and then something I really don't like from that first hour.
You know what? I'm kind of, that's it. I'm really with you on that. Like, there was, and this is the thing, we come down to a kind of quality control aspect. It's like the bigger issue of the company. Like, stuff like this, it feels very fly by night, which you can get away with if you've got really good wrestlers and talented performers. But it is the feeling of watching what should be an excellent TV show. And I'm trying to think of the analogy in my head, but it just doesn't click. And it's got a great cast. It's got really interesting ideas. Do you know what it's like? It's like there's a couple of things I've watched recently, like big budget stuff on like Amazon Prime called The Peripheral, like science fiction stuff, and another one on Netflix called Bodies. Good concepts, big ideas, far too much going on. You can't keep up. And after a while, a lot of it is basically characters doing plot exposition. And that's what I feel like we get here. A lot of characters having to explain to us stuff that's going on. And you're like, what? What? There's no nuance, I don't think, to most of the stuff that we see there. There's certainly no subtlety because they're just running through stuff at such a tremendous rate. And like I say, I found this line watching like Collision. I was going, I kind of like that. Wasn't mad on that. Why is Eddie Kingston having this kind of match? There's all of those things that are the absolute legitimate criticisms on there as well. Plus, like, you know, the remnants of the JAS turning up on there as well.
Gotta talk about that. Like,
I know. And you brought up a brilliant comment with your tweet. I want to say, I'm still going to say tweet. We're going to TNA Twitter here, aren't we?
Oh, what poor Daniel Garcia. Like, you can see it in his tweets and his, you know, his interviews and stuff like that. That is not a happy man right now in this company. But yeah, why are the JS just wandering around as like this NWO B team? You know, Hogan's fucked off to the Wolf Pack and they're all arguing about who's the leader of the B team. That's what it feels like. Like, do you remember like back in the day when, you know, Daniel Garcia joined, you know, the Jericho Appreciation Society, and maybe we had some, me in particular, had some misgivings about it. Like, okay, cool. So now Daniel Garcia, the shooter guy, is gonna wear a silly hat. And I was like, oh no, it'll, you know, that it'll be character building, it'll be good for him. And there were definitely good stuff in the early stages. I've said it before. I love that early. It didn't really lead into the sports entertainment stuff too much, but like when it felt like the Pure Division was going to be built around him and Wheeler Yuta, you know, when Tony ROH started up, him as like that punk, I've got no respect for this Pure Division nonsense kind of guy. Like there was a lane there, a serious lane to go down with him. Instead, he's done the jokey stuff with the hat. Now he's doing the jokey stuff with the dance. All the while, like, you know, wasn't the story with Daniel Garcia joining the JAS supposed to be that, you know, he was a real wrestler who's joining the sports entertainment group, and we got teased time after time that he was going to rise up and leave Jericho. Remember that whole thread with Bryan Danielson where he was going to join, you know, he's going to join the Blackpool Combat Club, and Danielson was trying to get the wrestler out on him. That went cold. Then there was that point where there was a 4-way match on like one of the pay-per-views where like it seemed obvious that Daniel Garcia was going to be the one who was going to step up and have that, Willie won't he, you know, cooperate with Jericho. Nope, that spot went to Sammy Guevara. Oh, when it came time for somebody to stand up to Jericho, nope, that went to Sammy Guevara instead of Daniel Garcia. And Sammy Guevara kind of over time played the role of Daniel Garcia, all the while failing his way through it. Didn't get over as a babyface, didn't get over as a heel, you know, wasn't in the JAS, then he was in the JAS, then he was going to turn, and then he stuck heel, stick with Jericho, and then now he's a heel, but Jericho was a babyface. So like all that build up that Daniel Garcia was doing to rebel against, you know, this leader of the faction and have a babyface turn. Now the faction leader's got his own babyface turn now, and all the faction just wandering around just like lost puppies in their old JS gear. And yeah, Jericho gets to be the face, and they're just, you know, he's doing a stupid like feud now with 2.0 over whether he can do his dance or not at this point. Like it's proper early WCW, like late WCW early 2000s type of stuff, isn't it? Where it's like Booker T fighting over the T. He's fighting over whether he can do his dance, and the JS are all knocking around, like I said on the weekend show, and they're like, you know, they're knockoff JS gear that's just got the labels taken off it now. Like what even is this at this point? Like Daniel Garcia couldn't have had a worse 18 months.
You know what? This was the thing that we feared, and we feared it at the time when the idea of him becoming a sports entertainer. And the logic that you're always sold on is, well, he needs to show more of a personality. No, I don't necessarily agree with that.
Act, does it?
It doesn't mean he needs to be a comedy act. That's a very WWE way of looking at things, which has been an influence that's permeated this company. And now you've got the amount of producers who are from that world who believe that's the way that wrestling kind of should be done. I think there's a lot of that stuff that fills its way through to the final product. We see it with like Tony Storm and the like. Anyway, not banging on about that. The thing is here is he's just been wasted and forgotten about. And we really should be talking about, like you say, him defeating Jericho, because there was the genuine kind of crowd reaction of people watching Daniel Garcia. You've got to remember, he was he was just like on TV every week when he was first brought in, like Red Death and the rest of it. And then with 2.0, and you're like, oh, okay, this is like, they were like a kind of effectively a jobber faction, really, who are kind of like necessarily like elevated by Jericho. And we never got any payoff for it. And just this kind of reductive thinking. And instead now we're in a situation where I don't care about Jericho. I don't care about Sammy Guevara. I don't care about their feud. I don't care about anyone else who was in the JAS. Like, I mean, just I'm amazed that Jake Hager gets employed. Like at this stage, like, why is he there? Like to wear a hat. It's like that kind of stuff. None of that should be on TV. That's where you get into your quality control and you go, if you're not doing anything useful for them, let Daniel Garcia tour then. Let him do other stuff. Let him go to other places. I think that's where we kind of go. And then bring him back in when you feel there's actually something for him to be able to do, rather than, as you say, collecting him as a toy. Because it's depressing for him because he's not wrestling the kind of matches he had when he was first brought in, and he was being given extended matches against Moxley and Danielson and the like. And you're like, oh, okay, he's not there yet, but there's a story you could do with this. And then you had him and Wheeler Yuta, who also, I have to say, is part of Blackpool. He's in Blackpool Combat Club, but he's not really like a featured kind of character. There's stuff like they're people who.
I'm going to start on them, mate. The faces of the heels, who knows? Depends on the fucking segment. But that's I'm getting up. You know, the tweet I did about it's getting a lot of it's actually not that much pushback, to be honest. Like mostly people in agreement, and there's the odd person. Well, Daniel Garcia dancer's over. You know, someone literally has just replied to me saying that. Well, the dancer's over, so you know he's clearly the most over of the lot, and that's due to that booking. Like, yeah, the silly dancer's over. La Parka's silly dance was over. It's not being over, is it? Like, it's not. It's not him. The obvious story, which was, oh, you know, okay, yes, this we could, even if we disagree with it. This pure wrestler who's been put in the sports entertainment group, the obvious logical end to that story is he does the heel thing for a while, but eventually realizes, I'm a real boy, I'm a wrestler, and he fucking fights out and breaks out as the babyface and has his match with Jericho. None of that happened. Instead, Sammy Garcia got the role. Now the face-heel dynamic's all fucked up with Jericho and Sammy, and if there was ever going to be another payoff of that, for whatever reason, Sammy gets chance after chance, and Daniel Garcia's at this point in his career. And it's like, it's had knock-on effects across. Not to turn this into a big AEW booking session, but like it's had effects across, or like a ripple across the company, because it bleeds into the Don Callis family stuff. Because like with that stuff, Jericho became the focused upon babyface in that dynamic. And weren't we supposed to care about Kenny Omega wanting to get his revenge on Don Callis? Like that's partly Kenny Omega's fault. I couldn't buy less that Kenny Omega really cares about ever getting revenge against Don Callis. And that's just Kenny's demeanor for you, unfortunately, in general. But like on top of that, shouldn't Kenny still be gunning for Takeshita? Wasn't Takeshita supposed to be the centerpiece of this whole story? Instead, somehow it's kind of Jericho and it's Don Callis, and it's not actually the wrestlers that we started this with, which would be Kenny finally getting another, you know, big singles match with Takeshita and beating him. You know, like Takeshita's just fucking window dressing at this point. He just stands in the background while Don Callis gets himself over. Like, it's both of those stories, by being merged together, have just become a bit of a mess, really. And I don't understand who's supposed to get over at the end of it all.
And that's the thing. There isn't that clear. That's why I feel like there's a lot of focus. The focus is the issue with AEW and on this, and having a long, cold, hard look in the light of day and going, how many of these storylines do we need? Why are we telling all of these stories? How do we tell some of these stories across the shows so they become actual kind of like big, important segments? Actually, I want to see Rampage because I know that they're going to be doing some follow-up to, I don't know, Swerve Strickland and Hangman Page. That's never going to happen. So it doesn't feel like that's ever going to kind of get those.
Well, to be fair, to that point, they're using Rampage, aren't they, for Ortiz and Santana? That's kind of what you're. That's getting stick to, because it's all happening on Rampage, isn't it? And that's where I am. I'm a little bit lenient, and it's like, well, they can't win, you know. But you know, as a fan, that's not my problem. You know, I do think, you know, the LAX feud should be happening at a more prominent pace than their least watched show. At the very least, Collision. You know, but. You know, that does speak to your point a bit. Sammy Garcia.
There we go. I know Simon's brought that up there as a potential title down for this one as well.
Well, a nice little sidebar into AEW's bucket issues there. But yeah, to wrap up on Collision, like I say, there's still enough I enjoyed about the show. Amiro and Andrete match was a fucking, again, that's it does tie into the point. Daniel Garcia's gotten no payoff out of his story, whereas the man who pinned Chris Jericho, Action Andrete, got given about 12 kickouts and a big babyface fire spot at the end of this Miro match, and the crowd could not fucking care less. There's a failed experiment for you. Outside of that, FTR had the job match, and Ricky Starks and Big Bill and came out to work Claudio and Wheeler Yuta in the main event that most people forgot for the last half hour. We ended up with House of Black standing strong because it was the House of Black show this week. Any notes on any of that? What do you think of the commentary team now? The fact that they've moved over to Kevin Kelly being kind of, it's a bit like as you get in trouble in work and your boss sits next to you all day and watches you doing your job. That kind of feels like what's happening there with Tony Schiavone now in the lead seat, and Kevin Kelly's very much the second or third voice on these shows now. That feels it's very much an on-purpose decision, and maybe people backstage are about as happy with Kevin Kelly's work as I think we've been.
Do you know? I think that's the thing about it, is what we've seen is that he hasn't got the voice to kind of lead it, because I think Kevin Kelly is kind of, he's got kind of lazy with it. And in many ways, I thought he was better as a second fiddle here as well. But then I think that's part of the issue in terms of the commentary was, I didn't think it overall added loads to it. I mean, Schiavone kind of has that. I mean, for me, for us, it's probably there's the retro feel of WCW in terms of him calling big TV stuff. Like he's kind of absolutely fine at doing that. And having Kevin Kelly there as a second fiddle with Nigel McGuinness playing basically heel, it does feel somewhat second rate having Excalibur and Taz and Tony Schiavone on Dynamite as well. And I think that's, there's stuff about it where I'm not necessarily mad about the commentary team at this point. I don't know whether or not it's like, did you need Kevin Kelly? Not really. Was Ian Riccoboni perfectly good enough to do this? Absolutely. That's the person who should be there. He had chemistry with Nigel McGuinness. They're not going to go back to that. Or we've even had him and Caprice Coleman. Just get use out of the pair of them, because I think they're a really good commentary team as well. It just feels like such a weird fit bringing in Kevin Kelly and then kind of, like, in a sense, demoting Kevin Kelly for being Kevin Kelly. Like, that's just kind of what he is, isn't he? That's the kind of, the lad that he basically is. But it's a very, it does feel like a weird, it just feels like a weird kind of thing.
Definitely. Well, it's going to get weird because apparently Sami Callihan was backstage at a Collision, so you got that lot to look forward to, JP. You're excited for a prospect. Speaking of TNA, and we should have used that as the segue between TNA and AEW. I will say, and I've said this week a couple of times, I was a big Sami Callihan defender in 2019 to a fault. I was the first guest on Jamesy's Match of the Month podcast, and all of the work rate nerds tuned in to hear me raving about Sami Callihan's match against Tessa Blanchard, which I don't think people expect on our show with Jamesy. Sorry, folks. But I genuinely love those matches, and I thought Sami Callihan was a very good fit for Impact Wrestling as it was in 2018, 2019. I can't say I've got any interest in 2023 to see him work his style, especially with him. He looks not quite in the physical shape you would have expected him to be a couple of years ago, the last Impact run we saw him do, and just generally feels like it's in the world's most bloated wrestling promotion. We're entertaining stories this week, JP, of one of the shit nights coming in, and we're talking about Sami Callihan coming in, like Saraya getting a favour and Moxley getting a favour for his old mate Sami Callihan here, And I say Moxley because Moxley's already there. Moxley can do the deathmatch style and do it much better than Sami Callihan did, as much as I was a fan of Sami Callihan back in the day. I can't think of an argument why anyone would want to see that. Well, I can understand why people might want to see it, but I can't give them an argument to have him on screen myself. A justified
on screen. Do they need him as a producer? But this is the thing. It's like, oh, I like him. We should sign him. No. You're getting into this is just the realm of trying to collect people, and there isn't any room and space. They have enough producers. They have enough commentators. They sure as fuck have enough wrestlers. You don't need someone who is going to be, okay, we're going to put him into this role. It's no, you don't need him. Oh, he's mates with John Moxley. Good for him. End of conversation. That's it. You don't think you take it any further from that. what is he going to add to that product? Like anything in particular? Like great matches? No. Like amazing promo? No. Like, what is it? He's well liked by someone. I'm sure there's loads of people who are well liked. This is the thing. It's that element of quality control is really what they need. They need to go, do you know what? They need to let people go. Again, we come back to this because that would make for a much more organized kind of decent product, wouldn't it? As much as anything. But yeah.
No, we need to make a job for Sally Callahan, who again I can see the positives of a few years ago. Not in this company, not in this that company. There shouldn't be any vacancies. There really shouldn't, based on the roster we've got. I'd rather, and when it comes to Paige's fucking desperate brother, I'd take Zach Knight, the former was he a Fulham defender, over Zach Knight.
Yeah, very tall centre half was Zach Knight at Fulham. I don't know what they lost. We'll get into an FPL conversation, won't we? We do about this. I know Son scored a couple, which made me think, I didn't get in most. I'll have a conversation for another time.
There we go. So yeah, that's the rumour mill swearing around AEW. Only other quick news story on AEW front / ROH front is, as we talked about on Weekend Show, Final Battle is going to be an Honor Club special, so streaming numbers are going well. Is what we know about that. Any more excited for Dynamite coming up this week, JP? Got the payoff to the MJF and Juice Robinson angle, which they seem to have, to be fair to our conversation a couple of weeks ago, kind of let go at this point. It doesn't feel like they're leaning into the roller quarters thing. It feels like maybe an adult has pulled MJF aside and talked about him as his pet little idea, because they ran that nice video clip, didn't they, on Dynamite of MJF, talking about what it is to grow up Jewish and be a Jewish sportsman and champion, which was absolutely great. Should be on your TV. Felt like almost an answer, to be honest, to the poor taste angle that seems to be dropped now. But Juice Robinson won the nondescript Rampage style battle royal that main event of Dynamite last week to get the opportunity. So it's MJF versus Juice Robinson on this show. Hook and your boy RVD. It is from Philadelphia, and to be fair, ticket sales are really strong for this show. It looks in the 5,000 to 6,000 range. So they'll be running Philly to death next year. But Hook and Rob Van Dam against John Silver and Alex Reynolds is on the show as well. We have apparently Tony Khan with a gift for Sting on the show.
TNA wrestling, I heard, being speculated is the thing to get for him.
Shida versus Ruby Soho on the show. Adam Page and the Young Bucks versus the Hardys on the show. If this was a game of EWR, every time Hangman Page appeared on screen with Nick and Matt Jackson, you get a note from Sophie going, Hangman Page lost overness in this segment, because he should not be knocking around with the fucking in a match against one of the three teams the Bucks seem to be willing to face these days, the Hardys and Brother Zay. And also on the show, the small matter of Kazuchika Okada and Orange Cassidy against Bryan Danielson, Claudio Castagnoli was randomly added to the show, JP, on Collision. Speaking of a super no vacancy roster, it's quite the Dynamite coming up this week.
Exactly, and they're packing I'd argue they're packing these things too much, aren't they? Like, again, if we're talking about matches there, we're talking about five matches already announced for that. They'll probably chuck in a squash match as well in there. Yeah, exactly. And then we'll have a series of segments cut in between it. So they're just kind of going heavily into this route. I thought Okada's on there maybe because they're going to want to promote him and Danielson at the Dome.
I assume that's win, especially working the Blackpool Combat Club. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the reason for it being there. Should it be on there? Not really. I don't think you need to have this. In some ways, if it was an Okada Danielson segment where he challenges him for the Tokyo Dome, I'd be kind of much more interested in that. I don't think you need to have the match at all. No. That would be.
I mean, I'll take it. It's Okada and Danielson on a Dynamite.
It's not that it's
I want the show to be good still.
But I'm not like at the same time. It doesn't make Okada feel like kind of special. He's brought in for a tag randomly out of nowhere. That's my kind of reservation for it. It's like, in some ways, he should feel like a much bigger the idea of Kazuchika Okada wrestling on Dynamite. It shouldn't be like, oh, they're doing that, are they? And that's kind of how I feel. And that's
an AEW problem all up and down.
And that very much is a Tony Khan AEW problem.
yeah, matches just kind of do spring out of nowhere. But as matches go, like I'm into it. I think my criticism will be like, well, if this is set up for Wrestle Kingdom, like AEW's got their own pay-per-view coming up to kind of sell, so it's weird timing that they do it before Full Gear. But maybe there's they're not going to be an opportunity to do it, or maybe the match is coming sooner than we think. I've got no notes on what Tony Khan's gift for Sting is going to be. Assume it's legit. Maybe we'll get an angle. Maybe we'll get some kind of parade of heels to
Abdullah the Butcher coming out of a big box.
That'd be good. I'd enjoy that. Cactus Jack, Foley was over at like Matty was doing the Anfield tour last week. He might he didn't look like he had one more running in him, but I don't know. I'd take Cactus Jack and Sting again. We'll do that mixtape one day. But yeah, outside that, yeah, like I say, Adam Page of the Young Bucks against the Hardys. Yeah, get Hangman Page away from that ROH Trios division is probably my note on that one. But to me, that looks like a decent Dynamite. It does. It's just whether these tonal problems get fixed, and whether generally the interest is there with AEW, and whether they can right this ship as we go into this pay-per-view. RoboCop says could be the Sting opponent. There you go.
That would be that'd be fucking awesome. I think more stuff announced for Full Gear would be the thing that I kind of want to see. And I'm talking about singles matches, none of the multi-man stuff. And again, stress that point when it comes to every single pay-per-view. You go, we've had a couple of good ones. We'll half-arse it by chucking in fucking 10-man tags. But no, singles matches, that's where the fucking money's at.
I think we're doing a greatest hits here of things we ever go at Tony Khan for. No wonder I'm not on any press lists anymore.
He's not fixing them. And he's not interested in learning, which is the more worrying aspect, I think, of all of this. And taking
it's becoming a bit WWE, innit? It's becoming a bit like I hear this all the time, like, oh, people aren't harsh enough on WWE. They'll talk about Meltzer doing that. Really, if you had that criticism, no, you go through AEW with a fine-tooth comb and like you let WWE get away with murder. It's because we stopped caring. It's because we were saying the same thing as hardcore fans for 20 years of what all the problems were, and there comes a point where like, oh, Raw's 3 hours isn't a talking point anymore. Yes, Raw's 3 hours. We all know it's pretty much borderline impossible to have a good 3 hour wrestling TV show. We know you can't say that. I think that's happening with AEW, isn't it? Where like, a lot of these booking tropes that Tony Khan does, dream matches out of nowhere, lack of build, all of those little things, repetitive booking tropes, battle royals, tournaments, all of that stuff, too much comedy. He's probably not going to change, is he? No matter how many people are pointing these things out, and we're all going to go blue in the face saying it over and over again. So that's what we've learned, JP. We are now a TNA podcast, not an AEW podcast. They won't steer us wrong. He'll be fine.
We're jumping on the hipster bandwagons all of the way, mate, and I have no issue with that whatsoever. I'm full in on that type of stuff. But I mean,
did you? Oh, go on.
No,
I was probably going to go to what you were going to say. Please just carry on.
Okay. The only thing I was going to say in terms of, you mentioned WWE, correct? Like, we don't watch Raw. I think it is notable, and we spoke again about this on the weekend show as well. But the idea of the more defined roles in WWE, and like watching WWE as a product, and I think this is when we say we're not harsh. Like, the TV holds no interest for me. Holds more interest for you. And I have to say, in recent months, I found myself scrolling through the horrific Discovery Plus app, kind of go through some WWE stuff, anything that happens of interest on like kind of SmackDown, Raw, and the rest of it, and NXT. But they've made that decision of effectively sidelining Vince McMahon from the creative process. Triple H having that much more defined role as set by Ari Emanuel as well. Why? Probably because he's not a fucking loon and a sex pest. That would probably be like the reason why that's a good thing for them to be doing that. And he's done his research and thought, oh, this bloke's some nutter, isn't he? We'll use his name, we'll get his company, and then we'll fuck him out. Yeah, brilliant. Like, no issue with that whatsoever. But I think that's when we talk about the less criticism of WWE. When we get round to those monthly shows, apart from the last couple, they've been the anomalies this year. For the most part, it's been very, very good. And really, the build for the last couple of years, their big shows have generally delivered what their fans want. Us screaming and shouting about what we would want for it, it's just pissing into the wind. It doesn't make any difference whatsoever. However, they've delivered competent, good, big cards, which have delivered generally what what people are liking from it, and we're going to get more of that. And I think that's the kind of bigger takeaway from Vince not being there. You're not going to get the kind of, we're just going to change the booking round for the fucking sake of it, the last minute. Why? Because I say so, and I am wrestling. And I think that era being dead, because that's the thing that we were screaming about for 20 years. A man who would make booking decisions out of spite for his audience. That was an incredible situation we ended up in, simply because there was no one to tell him he couldn't do anything wrong. And all the people who worked for him never told the emperor that he had any clothes, or in this case, any creative abilities anymore, outside of like the odd, like, you know, a broken clock is right twice a day, isn't it? And occasionally he'd book stuff well, but it was only in like the build up to a Mania match. And even then he'd find a way of fucking around with it as well. And it just means that what AEW are having to deal with, AEW need to be on all cylinders. And I remember Suit Williams writing about this, Voices of Wrestling, that Vince McMahon edge that AEW had of, well, we'll always be more competent than them because we haven't got a loon at the center of it. It's like, well, that is very much definitely taken away. And it feels like Ari Emanuel has had people scouting going, this is what you need to do. This guy will deliver exactly what you want without any of the grief or the baggage or all the potential kind of lawsuits and scandals that could end up coming out afterwards. And if the Bill Simmons Netflix documentary does any of the job that it should be doing, it should be absolutely ripping this man to pieces.
I can't wait for that. I love that he's not got apparently not have an editorial say so on the final finished product. And I was saying, because that switched, because that sounded like it was just going to be like a fluff piece on Vince, and then all the news stories happened, and you know he's lost power in WWE, and now maybe he's lost power on how his biopic is going to look as well. That'll be interesting too. But yeah, as I've said to you, I'll repeat it one more time. But Ari Emanuel, for whatever you can say about him, and I'm sure he's, you know, we don't know him as well as we know Vince McMahon, but I'm sure he's a cunt in many ways to himself, but he's not a stupid cunt, is the thing. No. And yeah, he won't be speaking to the podcasters, but he'll be speaking to people who follow WWE as a business and people who, you know wrestling, and pretty much to a man, everyone who knows wrestling knows that Vince McMahon is the problem, the central problem of WWE creative over the last 20 years, pretty much. And that Triple H is creative, as Andy has said in the chat there, as we've been saying, is at the very least competent, which is a step up from, you know, the outer touch crazy old man, as Andy puts there, and that's absolutely my take on it. I don't, you know, watch these Smackdowns and Raws, and if I'm not as critical about them as I am AEW, it's one because, well, how many times can I talk about how much I hate the camera work in backstage segments and, you know, the overall phoniness of the product, which isn't for me. But I will say, and I won't go doing somersaults like a lot of WWE fans will, I'll watch a SmackDown like this week's SmackDown, and like, yeah, overall, think it was a competent, solid show. You know, they're putting LA Knight in the right position. He continues. That's something we don't talk about enough. Like he's holding it. Yes, in ring, he's not a wrestler I want to see wrestle. So this is damn with faint praise. But he went out there with Paul Heyman and held his own and felt like a main event wrestler. We always say it about him. He's got the confidence and the poise, and he's never going to be like baited down like a lot of people in his position might have done in the past. Thought that was solid from SmackDown. They even introduced some stakes. The idea that you know, doing the Usos jumping back and forth and beating the shit out of each other on Raw and SmackDown, which completely made they make a mockery of their draft. Like that's another gigantic to-do complaint we've constantly said, oh, Kevin Owens has been moved to SmackDown, therefore, it's Sami Zayn's so sad because his mate's gone to SmackDown. Well, everyone else just turns up on SmackDown, so why can't Sami Zayn? Like, what's the issue? That actually, at least with the Nick Aldis like role there on SmackDown, they've introduced that as a thing where he's finding the Raw people for appear on SmackDown. I think with Triple H, you'll get those slight improvements. It's never gonna, you know, for all I'll criticize AEW, don't think I'm ever going to enjoy Raw or SmackDown as good as a Dynamite that's even half fire on all cylinders. I think every week, even a bad Dynamite's going to give you a match that is, twice as good as anything on Raw or SmackDown, and promos like Eddie Kingston's one on Collision this week. We didn't get much to mention. That man could sit like Don West, sell ice to Eskimos, come out of a comedy match with Jeff Jarrett and leave you wanting to despite the illogical nature of the match, want to see see him kill Jay Lethal. You're not getting a promo of that quality on WWE TV, but slowly but surely it does feel like they're moving back into that, Triple H 6-month story arc lane where he's got his favorites and he knows who he's setting up, and Jay and Jimmy Uso is being slowly set up, and Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns are being set up, and Logan Paul and Rey Mysterio is a solid little match for a big Saudi show. People are slotted in the right places, and he's allowing the wrestlers to do at least competent work, which again, is more than you can say than about when the other cunt was in charge. But moving on from there, nice little sidebar to WWE. Quick catch up session. Probably have to keep it quick enough as we go into the late hours of this spotlight. JP, I know you've got some MLW Slaughterhouse to catch us up on, a bit of CMLL in there as well. I should probably talk about Royal Quest. You can ask me, JP. You take over. What you want to know about it? I was there a couple of weeks ago. Came home with the Royal Quest. Leggy wasn't feeling great last week. Hence those spotlights. But I had a cracking time. Nice to be back in the area. Always happy to be around Hackney Wick. Joe was there. He was in fine form. Ogdens were knocking about. It was a good little day out. As far as the show goes, we've got some mixed thoughts. But I don't know. Do you want to know, JP? But have you seen any of it, actually?
I have.
The Royal Quest.
So I even managed to try and just test out the live stream, just to see if it was working. And I was okay, no. Generally fine. I go in there probably with limited expectations. It was absolutely fine for what it was. It's a better arena to film wrestling in than Crystal Palace. It was less dark and everything else. So I thought it worked.
Crystal Palace.
It worked about what it was. I was going to ask you, what was the crowd?
Shite. It wasn't. It looked. I think I've heard 3,000 odds. It looked less. It looked like we need to get the local council involved. What's the local council up that way, JP? You can probably tell us, one of your old haunts.
It'd be Hackney.
Hackney, there you go. Hackney Council needs to get on the case. There were a lot of empty seats, which was sad to see. I mean, it felt obvious because it felt like everyone we know pretty much to a man who likes wrestling was in London for All In and went to, and the hardcore fans in our kind of bubble, everyone we know was going to see the Rev Pro's anniversary show, and it was great. The place was pretty much packed, and it was a great day out. This felt like, and I felt like it from the start, really, we're doing another Copperbox show this soon after. That's your big venue that, the original Royal Quest pretty much sold out on, and you want to be, careful with that, with kind of how often you run it. And I think this was probably a lesson in that. I know it's a New Japan show rather than a Rev Pro show, but you could just feel it, even in the build-up. You could feel like I spoke to you, spoke to most of our mates. You come to the New Japan Copperbox show to a man. Everyone was like, I'm kind of skint after All In, or the motivation to travel all that way for the traveling fans didn't really feel like it was there. Combine that with a New Japan product that's not really that hot at the minute. Combine that with a New Japan product in which where they didn't really give much. It didn't feel like no Okada on this show. Obviously, Zack and Ospreay was fucking great, and Ishii and Shingo was fucking great. Hardly fresh matches in either case, and not really supported by much. As great as they were on the night, Eddie Kingston was in a fucking 6-person tag. It's cool. It was fucking great visual to see Michael Oku on the same team as Hiroshi Tanahashi and Eddie Kingston. But anybody who went to the show would have the same takeaway when Eddie Kingston came out. It just showed you that New Japan don't fully realize what they've got there, because people were fucking going mental for him. It was the newest incarnation of Steve Austin coming out. Eddie Kingston is over with this type of fan. And it felt like typical New Japan to not really realize that. They didn't even give him his own entrance. All the three of them came out together, and it was just course. And it was fine. We got to see him. It was a bit like getting to see T-Say at Naito. It's you get to see the stars, but there wasn't really a great selling point there. And that was an obvious thing. Get that in a bottle. Big Eddie Kingston entrance, even in a not even half full Copperbox. Great. That would have been a great moment in itself. And there were a few moments like that kind of felt missed through the night for me. And it just made me think, let's not do Copperbox again until next year, lads. What are they once a year will do as far as big wrestling shows there.
I think something early on in the year might be all right. and then you have a big show around August. I think I'd be fine with that if there was one like around March, but it did feel like far too soon. Like we're doing this 2 months after, less than 2 months after All In for it as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say you didn't get Gideon Gray on commentary. He was very good. It was him and Chris Charlton, and Gideon Gray was funny and has done a lot of commentary with Rev Pro as well. So it's not like he's completely averse to it. I mean, how did it? This was my general impression, and you can tell me if I'm wrong on this. Is I liked bits of the undercard, but that's because I like seeing young Rev Pro wrestlers getting a chance. Whether that carries
that was the only
along,
element.
There was that, and I thought, okay, I liked that stuff. So it's almost like the first 4 matches I did kind of enjoy. Then it entered into a quite lazy New Japan lull, where there's New Japan stars, but the matches themselves I could give less of a shit about. T-shirt Naito, sorry, don't bring him. Then
People talk about that like it's a positive. I know we ironically say about Kevin Nash in the 90s, but it was in the fucking 90s, you know? I don't want to pay money to see this cunt do nothing. That's the thing. Like, it was funny. You realise how the bubble we were. I was trying to explain. It wasn't me. Andy Ogden was just randomly in the pub was like, oh, you know, we'll get T-shirt Naito tonight. And Joe was just looking at him like, what do you mean? Like, Joe's been out of the bubble, hasn't he, for 3 years? Doesn't understand the full power of T-shirt Naito, but boy, did he see it on the night. Yeah, the undercard was full of that. Like I say, I rave about I'm not going to spend too much detail on it because it's a 2.5-week-old show at this point, but like just to briefly say that from the undercard, you're right. It was cool to see Robbie X in there with Taiji Ishimori. You know, he gave a good account of himself.
Yep.
Thespian Trent 7 was what it was. Didn't really get out of first gear for me. Yota Tsuji gave Luke Jacobs very little. I was disappointed in that, to be honest, for a match that on paper. And Luke Jacobs has got he's working Ishii at the Red Pro show in Crystal Palace in December. That's a ticket mover, I think. You know, I know people have got hang-ups about Crystal Palace as a venue, especially, you know, close to Christmas. So we'll see how that does. But that's, you know, doing that match again, perfect. It was just a bit of a shame that, Suji ate Luke Jacobs up a little bit. In this one, it wasn't a great follow-up to the Ishii match. Let's hope the Ishii rematch is that. The stuff here, I'm looking through the list. No recollection of Clark Connors and Drilla Maloney taking on Cameron Kai. And I suppose Leon Slater's big dive got over, so there was at least that in there. To be fair, I should give him credit.
Crazy young, them too. They're like stupidly young. I think that's the thing to remember. And Cameron Kai is like one we kind of end up forgetting about. And you go, is he 17? He's not even 18 yet. It's fucking outrageous. Like, really.
And to be the positive you say about that match as well, in there with like a Drilla Maloney who they're both used to working and type of thing. And yeah, to be fair, that was one where I shouldn't be harsh on that one, where the two young lads did seem to continue to make that push to get over. I suppose where I should save that criticism for it was this middle chunk of the card where like you can't tell me like that I saw Gorillas of Destiny, El Phantasmo, Tamatonga and Tangaloa against Alex Kaufman, Dave Finley and Gabe Kidd. Did I see that? Apparently. Then Narita and Shota Umino against Francesco Akira and Great Khan. Apparently that was a match that happened in front of me. Bushi and Naito versus Dookie and Sanada. I remember that just because it was fucking shit. It was fucking T-shirt Naito being lazy T-shirt Naito and Sanada having the least poise, charisma and main event just stature of any New Japan champion I can remember, especially once seeing live. Like, you'd forget that he's got the belt. He's fucking non-entity, it felt like. And you did the whole, face-off afterwards to be like, you get a bit of a face-off. There's the Wrestle Kingdom main event, and it's happening in front of your Copperbox. Crowd went mild. No one really cared. It was because how could you care about these two? I know there are hardcore Japanese LIJ fans and a couple of weebos who were into that stuff, but like, not for me. The LIJ stuff, I think we're going to be doing. We'll do a lot of complaining about that around Wrestle Kingdom time. Like I say, Eddie Kingston teaming with Tanahashi and Michael Oku, cool visual, but felt like Eddie probably could have done more against Tanara, Jeff Cobb, and TJP. That was fine, and it really was. It was a 2-match show. Shingo and Ishii went out there, and that was when the volume was turned up, and you got them to going through the classics. You sells and you. That turn into big seller exhibitions and your big moves and your double lariats and all of that stuff. Like, it was it was fucking to be honest, I actually thought that was the match of the night. Like, that was the one that got us on our feet. Like, we were up in the apparently we were back row, pretty much where you guys were at the first Copperbox show. We could have moved down. The view was just incredible up there, as far as a straight on view with the ring. So we were quite happy up there. So we were going mad for Shingo and Ishii. I would personally say that was the match of the night. And then Ospreay and Zack was no slight, fucking great in itself. Struggle to believe it's a 5.5-star match, but great match. And to get to see that live, to get them two doing all their wild counters and seeing Ospreay, this polished wrestler that he is, out there as the best wrestler in the world, in there with Zack Sabre Jr., who's someone who, they've always, despite the styles clash, it always works so well as a match.
Yeah.
It's like what we were saying about Sean and Brett, like the bodies seem to like slot together when it comes to the counters and all of that stuff. Like, that was a great main event. So, I got me money's worth with those two big matches, but yeah, the overall experience of the undercard and just generally the show, coming at a weird time in New Japan and coming at a weird time with all of us having been at the Copperbox not long ago for a big Rev Pro adjacent show to New Japan. It kind of suffered there, and you could see it in the attendance and I think the general interest level in the show.
The only thing I was sad about missing was meeting up with you lads for a couple of beers. That was basically great. That was the thing I was upset about. Like, if I was,
we did that thing though, JP. You go to somewhere like, I want to go back there. I want to experience all like the different bars and go around different parts of Hackney. It's one of the fucking same 3 places we went last time. It's like, we know them, idiots. Next time, fucking do a proper explore of Hackney. There's so much good shit up there, like food and drink and all kinds. Like, it is a great place to go see a show. So I'm glad I made the trip. I'm glad I got to see those 2 matches with my own eyes. I said it before, JP. I've been proud to say I was there live for Joe Kobashi. If anyone hasn't ever heard me say that, proud to say I was there for the Dragon Gate 6-man, which is another Meltzer 5-star match. I don't know if I'm actually gonna Ospreay Zack was great, but like 5.5 stars doesn't really have that same catch to it of like, I was there. That will pass the point of hilarity with Big Dave's ratings. But a 4.5-star match, absolutely. Great stuff.
That's what I would go with. Like, I really enjoyed it, but again, kind of very exhibition match. And again, like I spoke about the Speedball Mike Bailey match earlier on, felt like it was this is a match you can deliver in the UK, but it's all low stakes. It's not like the TV belt was on the line or anything else along those lines. So,
There we go. So there's your Royal Quest catch up. For those that were they're desperate to hear it, sorry for missing out on talking it last week. Before we get out of here, JP, got a couple of other. I've already basically talked SmackDown, so I can scrub that off the run sheet. What else did you want to mention?
Well, I do want to mention, I did watch it for last week's show, was MLW Slaughterhouse was back on here.
Joe Budden on it?
Well,
that joke will go over your head.
Jesus. Well, it had Joe Dabrowski dressed up as Nails and Matt Stryker as Super Mario. And then he just sort of ends up dropping the Super Mario stuff and doing that serious look to camera that he always does on there. It's weird and it's wacky. The main event was good. It was fine. Alex Kane defeats Tom Lawler, who was a late replacement for Davey Boy Smith Jr. and a fucking hell of an upgrade. So that was fine. And then it led to Matt Cardona coming out afters and challenging him. So he's going to be like the kind of next challenger to go in. And he's thing, which I did like his tights where he's got Indiana Jones's like a kind of silhouette of his face with like Indie God in that font as well. That was on there. Minoru Suzuki, Jacob Fatu was a Minoru Suzuki match, except he was, it was fine. Again, they did a couple of title changes. We had Rocky Romero, who's been brought up a fair bit on this show already and will be brought up again in another couple of minutes as well, becoming the World Middleweight Championship by defeating Akira in there. And they had a Chamber of Horrors match at the start, which actually it wasn't the big lads, like these two from The Calling. It was just awful. So I thought they were going to do the big lads, but it was all very tongue-in-cheek. They had the Graves, like Halloween Havoc 91, and it had Gary Juster, We Hardly Knew You Were Here, and stuff like that. And there's something about Sean Ross Sapp on there as well. It was all very tongue-in-cheek. And
like the old, where he'd have the Easter eggs on the old Halloween Havocs.
Halloween, and then have that on there as well. But the spin the wheel, make the deal thing was just to set up a Falls Count Anywhere match, which like, I mean, it's down as 46 minutes. What happens is they'd have a part of the match, they go backstage, they disappear, and then they just come back and they'd be carrying on the match. And it just sort of ends with basically Akira possibly turning face. So it was like a whole lot of stuff, basically, without any real quality. Like, it's not that it's bad, and it's better from a wrestling perspective than what it was. And I like what they do with Alex Kane, even if he's not like he's incredible or anything else. He's perfectly fine, and the crowd are kind of into him. So it's all right, I think, but nothing really more than that. You didn't lose anything. You certainly won't be losing any sleep having not seen this show. And is there anything to recommend from it? The Rocky Romero Akira match is good, but I wouldn't go that far. I'd probably say 3.25. Like,
quite a little good year, Rocky Romero. Eh?
He has he's a real, because I think the stuff to go and see, and this is very much after the horse has bolted, but the connection is we've had Mystico versus Rocky Romero this week in a good match. Well, another show he was on, I managed to finally get round to kind of seeing, and a lot of it was kind of
the anniversary show. Is that what that was?
The anniversary show. Well,
we really wanted to see that 5 weeks ago or whenever it was.
It was, yeah. So this was from like the 16th of September, so a little late, only a month. Like, I just wanted to go to Arena Mexico afterwards. I can get the hype. Effectively, what this is imagine a grown-up AAA. That's really what this is. Like, and this is the thing to explain about, like, kind of the reason we watch AAA is partly they've got English commentary. It's also easier to get. And CMLL for a long time felt like a bit of a shit show. Why? Because all the people who were big there ended up leaving and going to AAA or going to the States. So it was hard. Like, it wasn't like there was much selling points necessarily. Well, that appears that there's a very sort of traditional formula. I don't know if this is the stuff I could watch every week, but big shows I could certainly dip in and out of. But Arena Mexico looked like, because it was 16,000, and obviously it's like a real like amphitheater effect from it as well. The video screens and everything else, it looks great. The presentation, they had a Mexican army, but it was relatively understated, just with big flags of Mexico around the place. Nobody with any urns, anything along those lines, but booked in a sane, sensible way. It's all best 2 out of 3 falls, like across the board. But there's nothing there that's particularly bad. I mean, there's one match where it's a group of old lads doing arm drags. Like, there's a lot of that stuff on here. And like, I don't need to see another head scissors again necessarily. But the match I do want to speak out for was like the hair versus hair match, which came about. There was a tag team. It was Angel de Oro and Volador Jr. Defeating Averno and Ultimo Guerrero, and then they would face each other in a hair versus hair match, which doesn't really make any sense. You'd really think the losing team would go there. But anyway, I digress. They had a match and it was Alan Farrell who's kind of really got me back into kind of thinking, actually, I wouldn't need to see this, because he's been talking about that. He's been talking about All Japan. And I've seen bits of it with the Yuma Aoyagi run, not the match against Kenta Miyahara, but CMLL just appears like it's certainly got its shit together. Like a very competently booked lucha promotion that looks good, that you're kind of happy that there isn't English commentary. And it's not the commentary that the fans can hear as well. It's just normal commentary for all intents and purposes. And they had a hair versus hair match where Volador Jr., and Alan said this better than I could, either he's really hurt his shoulder and you kind of think, oh, fuck, he's fucked it, but he's managed to work around it in an incredible way. Or it's the best selling of like a worked injury that you've seen for a while, because it looked very convincing. There were like trainers out for a while. He was holding it close to his body. He wasn't doing stuff with it, like whips into the ropes and other stuff like that. But it kind of worked. And it's only 13 and a half minutes. And it's just the fucking drama. And then the pop when he wins. And Angel de Oro, who has the look and physique of someone where you could see him in the WWE developmental system. Just kind of has that look to him. Loses. The barber, straight off, like with the hair, like proper bald. No fucking about, no laziness here. No bleeding from the scalp. Like, he was in there. It was incredible the way he was done it. And then it was headlined by a mask versus mask match with Templario and Dragon Rojo Jr., which wasn't, I mean, I don't think it was as good. It certainly wasn't as dramatic as the hair versus hair match. But by the end, the fucking tears like this lad is in. I'll be sending you across a photo to include, like, in the
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, like to get in there as well, because he's there with, I don't know who it is. It's two members of his family. I don't know if it's his wives, his sisters, or anything else. One of them looks like it's kind of got fake hair. I won't lie. I was like more bemused by that. And he's proper crying. He's going to be losing his mask and everything else. Spoiler alert, he's a good looking lad. He'll be fine. The next thing he'll lose is his hair. But it's just the enthusiasm and the production values are good. There's no spotty sound stuff. This was just like, actually, this looked and felt really good. And because they've got the arena, you just think, I want to go there. That looks like a proper arena. If you put in like some kind of like big stars and whatnot into it, and it feels like CMLL's just having that bit of a revival from, like, you'd read about it in the Observer newsletter. CMLL's like a shit show. The person who was going to take over is like, you know, all the various kind of angst and stuff like that, stuff that's happened on there as well. Like, all that seems to be out of the window. But as a show to put on, with just the general quality of wrestling, like there was a Lince Dorado and Samurai Del Sol versus Soberano Jr. and Titan. Just 20 minutes. It was really good. It's a really good match. Like, I mean, it's a lucha match, and but it's not stupid lucha, and it's not fluffed lucha. It was like proper acrobatic, athletic lucha style, but they weren't fucking up, and it was really good. Like, there was nothing on this show I thought, oh, that's a bit of shit. And like, I mean, I have to say, I didn't pay as much attention to like the Stephanie Vicaire, who feels like someone we will get to know, like she's like their big kind of like women's wrestler in there as well. But like across the board, it feels like they've got their shit together with what they do. And the fact that they own the arenas, and the fact they're able to kind of sell some of these out, they're on that hot run there at the moment. They've got as much out of Rocky Romero, and he was in there with Mystico as well at that point in time, and obviously a 6-man tag. It was really fun and easy to watch. I'd highly recommend it.
You've been turned from AAA JP to CMLL JP. Alan Farrell would be even smiling listening to that.
He would do, isn't it? And he's turning me from Noah into All Japan. I'm just doing what Alan Farrell says at this stage, which I'm kind of fine with at this stage. But it is that point where the reason why we go off companies isn't just because, it's just sheer fucking laziness. I've always had a penchant for the wacky shit. I was thinking about what is the kind of wrestling I like. But there's always a point where just wrestling companies kind of crash and burn, and you do sit there going, why am I watching this? And at times with AAA, you're like, I've seen this. We've seen so many Triple Mania cards, and we can't tell them apart as soon as they're over. They're like, was that one outside? Was the army involved? Like, we know what the tropes are. And this just felt something like a bit different. Yeah. Will I get bored of it? No doubt. Like, I don't know if this will be a regular thing. I kind of lapse in and out of it, but I was genuinely impressed.
Especially at the time as well, where, like we were saying about the AEW stuff, you know, but all a little bit burnt out on it. It's a shame because Tony Khan's got the riches of the world, so you almost can't go off it and stop watching it and spend your time on CMLL and All Japan and whatever, because it's always going to be so notable, isn't it? There's always going to be something there that makes you have to watch almost have to watch the 5 hours of it. But it's good to have those little oases there. Just a shame, it took so long to be able to get hands on the VOD there. And was there anything else you want to mention before we go? So I've already talked SmackDown, so scrub that off.
No, I think that's
it. Couple of other quick news stories to just to wrap up on that we had in. Apparently, just breaking now, JP. I thought you'd want to know this, mate. It's massive news story that Brock Anderson has confirmed his AEW departure. Bad news, mate. Removed from the AEW roster page this week. It's also just broke. Probably, he's one of those ones you talk about, isn't it? Where probably AEW wasn't the best place for him. Arn will be back in WWE before you know it. He'll be back.
Wouldn't it be good to send some of them over here? For just a month, work a load of shows over here, and they would have some kind of minimal name value. And they go, oh, yeah, he was on AEW, and they go along and see.
On your note of your boy Mystico, CMLL, unfortunately wasn't it. As much as he was a ticket seller, a point for Matt here. His debut averaged 340,000 views for Rampage. That just come through. Apparently, SmackDown maybe fared pretty much in the line with what it normally does. 7% down, 2.253 million viewers. That news has just broken as well. JP. I mean, it comes in a week where I'm sure WWE aren't going to be crying about it. They're on what you call it? Not is it the FX network or whatever the one? FS Sports.
FS Sports.
FS1.
Fox Sports 1. Yeah. FS1.
Yeah. They're on FS1 this week, so SmackDown's going to die regardless. Plus, they're in Saudi, so they're not going to care. And I believe it's a tape show. But got to be said, like, just quick news though for them. Survivor Series now. I'm sure you might talk this more on the midweek news dump on the Patreon. They've now opened up. They've got 16,860 seats with 15,128 disputed at this moment. You want to say WWE's not a hot product? Well, maybe the TV ratings aren't exactly, Monday Night War era, but yeah, those ticket sales could continue to pile up, especially for these big tentpole events. So something's working over there, JP.
Do you know what? And it is working. Like, I mean, I think that's they've got, in some ways, I'm surprised they haven't run this in the stadium, but it's probably more to do with the time of the year, isn't it? Than anything else. It's just not like a good time to be doing that. Yeah, it's Saudi this weekend.
Oh no, I'm wrong. So it's a tape Smackdown this week. It's not the go home for Saudi. So that's next week, isn't it? Next weekend. So yeah, my mistake. That's the first weekend in November. This weekend's Impact UK tour weekend. So yeah, of course they wouldn't run head to head with Impact in Coventry. No, it's next week actually. That one there, but still, yeah, impressive to see. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So unless there's any other quick news notes you want to cover, JP, before we get out of here, any other plugs, anything else you want to mention?
All roads lead to patreon.com/grapple. Like say, we'll have the pre-show.
We steal that from post wrestling. Don't all the roads lead to post wrestling? I'm sure Martin used to say that.
I definitely stole that from mine. Definitely, 100%. Right,
post wrestling's great too, by the way. Back to wearing the hat, so post wrestling.
I would, yeah. So I would go there. We obviously the film club with the spooky moments with King of the Mountain, Robert Brocky, which is brilliant. Definitely have a listen to that. That is like all of the stuff that we've got on there, like a hell of a back catalogue on there as well, I should say, at this stage in the game. So yeah, I go there, patreon.com/grapple, and the YouTube channel, youtube.com/grapple. Unless there's that weird C and a backslash in there as well, which never makes any sense, but that's algorithms for you.
Apparently, just to note, they are in the UK. They are running head-to-head with Impact. They're not afraid. They're running Wembley on Sunday. I didn't know that. Arena, obviously.
I had no idea.
That is news to me. Thanks for that, Tim.
At all. That is complete news. No idea that was.
Feels like AEW, where like you're in a town, you find out Dynamite's on Wednesday. Oh, right, okay. These over there, good news. But yeah, on that note, like I say, JP said, patreon.com/grapple. One last plug for time. Definitely check that out if you haven't already. You can watch the full intensive version both on the Patreon and for now on the Spotify. So you got the option there as well as the edited version on YouTube. But yeah, plenty coming. Halloween Havoc poll. Get your votes in, folks, and we'll see who wins at the end of the week. But on that note, folks, thank you for tuning in as always. Thank you to all of our patrons for tuning in live for us. We're gonna get out of here, and we will catch you all again on next week's Spotlight.
Bye.
Good night, all.